Chapter 820. A palm strike from a shattering void tier elite was only equivalent to a tumble. Everyone's expression changed. Did this guy have the life of a cockroach that couldn't be killed? A shattering void tier's attack was actually completely unscathed. Oh, there was indeed some dust on his body, but that was all. Not to mention Ling Han, even if it was another shattering void tier elite, they would probably be severely injured or even killed instantly under such a blast. No. This has to be fake. Su Xiuran's eyes bulged out, his mouth opened wide, and even his tongue stuck out. Don't blame this prodigy for losing his composure. It was precisely because he was a prodigy of the present age that he deeply knew how difficult it was to cultivate his physique to the level of 10th tier rare metal. The sea race was powerful enough, wasn't it? Every single one of them had ancestral blood, especially the royal family. Relying on the true dragon's bloodline, not only did the possibility of advancing into the shattering void tier increase greatly, but they were also all-body cultivators. Their physiques were tough, and in a battle of the same tier, they could be said to have the upper hand. But very few kings of the sea race could reach the level of 10th tier rare metal in terms of physique. This step was too difficult. Not only did it require the bloodline of a true dragon, it also had to be extremely pure. For example, in the Four Seas, only the main Ao clan had 2 or 3 people who had cultivated their physiques to this level. In addition, the alternative dragon in the ghostly dragon cave was also different. Its ancestral blood was pure, and it had once stepped into this level. The reason why that alternative dragon couldn't even be killed by the immortals who descended to the mortal realm back then was simple. It was because its physique was at the level of 10th tier rare metal, and was too difficult to kill. This kind of physique could only be slowly refined like a level 10 rare metal after being captured, but that alternative dragon possessed battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier in the first place, so how could it possibly be slowly refined? However, Ling Han was currently only in the deity transformation tier, yet his physique had charged up to the level of 10th tier rare metal. How could people not lose their composure at this? Su Xiuran sighed inwardly. His defeat to Ling Han really wasn't an injustice at all. If he could kill his opponent, that 10th tier rare metal physique would really be too worthless. The Demon Snake King had lived for a very long time, and was also one of the strongest people in the world. Naturally, he would not even blink even if the sky were to collapse in front of him. He looked at Ling Han coldly and said, "I really did not expect that your physique had actually reached such a level. Old Demon Snake, do you still want to kill me?" Ling Han patted off the dirt on his body and flew back into the sky. In reality, the toughness of the physique was only one of the unique characteristics of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, but the more powerful aspect was its recovery ability. The body of Diamond's severed limbs would automatically regrow, and there was absolutely no need to circulate the indestructible Heaven Scroll. How terrifying was that? Of course, he wouldn't tell the other party. The Beast Snake King sneered coldly, and said, "It's just that your physique is slightly stronger. It doesn't matter even if I can't kill you for now. I can capture you and slowly refine you. 1 year, 10 years. I will definitely be able to refine you. What I don't lack the least is patience and time. Can you catch it?" Ling Han asked as he pointed. The Beast Snake King was instantly displeased. What kind of existence was he? When had he ever been pointed at by someone? He immediately wanted to make a move, but just as he raised his hand, he was suddenly startled, and said, "Honored one, show yourself." "What if I don't want to see you?" Yi Shuang's lazy voice was heard. "Then Honored one had better not interfere. This is the will of the 5 great sects." The Beast Snake King humphed. "Little earthworms, I don't know how many I've trampled to death in the past, and you actually dare to be insolent in front of me." Yi Shuang said proudly. She still did not show herself. "For the sake of that large earthworm, I don't want to become enemies with him. Get lost, lest you say that I bullied a junior in the future." "Honored one, aren't your words too big?" the Beast Snake King sneered. He was the strongest person in the world, with battle prowess as high as 12 stars of shattering void tier. Those that could rival him in the world could really be counted on one's fingers. Not to mention those freaks of the Purple Moon Empire, each of them grasped 4 or 5 mystical powers, and could even use the power of the nation, and their battle prowess even surpassed 15 stars. Are you going to get lost or not? Yi Shuang directly rebuked. The Beast Snake King took a deep breath. Obviously, she was a shattering void tier elite. There was no doubt about this, but how many stars of shattering void tier battle prowess did she have? At the moment, he was having a difficult battle with the Purple Moon Empire, and if there was another shattering void tier enemy, it would be an additional burden. It was best not to add more enemies for himself, unless he had the confidence to kill her here. However, they were both in the shattering void tier, and if one side wanted to escape, it was still quite certain. At worst, they'd just burn their life force, and the explosive speed would be something that even immortals couldn't possibly catch up to. All right, I'll only bring this junior with me, he said, pointing at Ling Han. No. Yi Shuang flatly refused. Honored one, you're too domineering, the Beast Snake King said coldly. Did she really think he was afraid? Yi Shuang laughed loudly, and said, I've always been domineering. Are you displeasing to the eye? If you have the ability, then come and fight me. How will I deal with you? The Beast Snake King trembled in anger. This woman was too much of a ruffian. He ignored her, and instead reached out to grab at Ling Han. Since he couldn't slap this monster to death, then he'd just capture him and bring him back to be suppressed. Such a physique could completely be used as a human pill, and after being refined, it would definitely be a great tonic. Impudence. A slender hand struck out, endlessly enlarging, and blocked the large hand that the Beast Snake King had stretched out. Peng, the two collided, and instantly formed a visible wave in the skies, crashing down with a loud rumble. Weng, a hemispherical light barrier immediately appeared on the imperial capital below. Under this wave, it trembled as if it was about to be destroyed. Pa, a few places split open, and the shock wave instantly caused great destruction. Fortunately, because of the existence of this light barrier, the imperial capital only suffered the impact. Otherwise, it would have been razed to the ground. The shattering void tier was too strong. In the skies, a light barrier also appeared on that battleship. The hull of the battleship swayed as if it was in the water, and was affected by the waves. Yi Shuang, don't fight with him here. My imperial capital is about to be destroyed. Ling Han called out. That defensive light barrier just now was actually formed by the silhouette of the black tower above the imperial capital. This was the wonderful use of power of the nation. If he could unify the whole north region, the defense that was formed probably even the Beast Snake King wouldn't be able to break through. Yi Shuang's figure flashed, and she was already stepping into the skies. She waved her long hair with great dissatisfaction, and said, Brat, you've grown bolder, actually daring to order this lady around. Grandaunt, please suppress this old snake. That should be fine, right? Ling Han said with a smile. Although it's not too sincere, this lady has such a helpful personality. It can't be helped, so I'll help you this once. Yi Shuang looked at the Beast Snake King, and revealed a bright smile. Little earthworm, if you don't leave now, there really won't be a chance. Who are you? The Beast Snake King looked at Yi Shuang solemnly. He actually couldn't tell the depth of her cultivation, which meant that her cultivation level was not beneath his. It was definitely impossible to surpass it. In this world, at most, one could only be in the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, unless it was an immortal descending to the mortal realm. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 821. This lady. Yi Shuang giggled. This lady is obviously the world's greatest beauty. Nonsense, Niu is. Hu Niu muttered from below, but now, no one would care about what she said. The Beast Snake King stared at Yi Shuang, as if trying to find some clue from her. After a while, he said, "This boy, I must take him away today." "Then you have to be prepared to hand over your old life here," Yi Shuang said indifferently, extremely casual even when facing an existence like the Beast Snake King. However, the calmer she was, the more the Beast Snake King dared not be careless. If it were before, he would definitely be full of confidence, but with the appearance of the Purple Moon Empire, he finally knew what it meant by there was always someone better. Just the 8 kings alone were enough to beat them to a pulp. Could this woman also be an old monster from some generation? Yi Shuang's eyebrows involuntarily twitched, and she said, "Are you guessing which era's old monster I am?" "Fuck, you really are a monster," the Beast Snake King said inwardly, and his expression couldn't help but change slightly. "You actually dare to call me an old monster, stinky earthworm, you really need a beating." Yi Shuang was furious, and immediately charged towards the Beast Snake King. The Beast Snake King dared not be careless, and hurriedly faced her with rapt attention. Peng, 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 the two fought fiercely as they soared towards the sky. Thus, although the shock waves from the battle were still overflowing, they deviated from the Imperial City's area. This made Ling Han nod internally. Yi Shuang wasn't just fooling around. He soared up and watched the battle from a close distance. In this world, aside from Shattering Void tier elites, he was the only one qualified to watch the battle between 2 Shattering Void tier elites at close range. "Fight, fight!" Hun Yo appeared beside him, clapping her small hands. "Right, forgot there was still a little monster." After a few moves, the Beast Snake King's expression was solemn, but he was greatly reassured. Yi Shuang was indeed very strong, not the slightest bit inferior to him, but also not surpassing him. After all, there were still many normal people in this world, and freaks like the Purple Moon Empire weren't common. "Honored one, I admit that you are very strong, but you are still not qualified to fight against the 5 sections. I advise you to rein in your horse before it's too late. Otherwise, your lifetime's worth of cultivation will go down the drain," advised the Beast Snake King. Their strengths were on par with each other. If they were to fight to the death, either of them would die. However, he still wanted to wait until the reckoning to enter the divine realm and become a divine spirit. With such a bright future ahead, how could he be willing to fall? "Ha ha ha, frog at the bottom of a well, if this lady doesn't show her might, you really think you're something." Yi Shuang laughed. She bared her teeth, and 2 blood-red wings instantly grew out from her back. No, these shouldn't be considered wings. There were no feathers or scales. Rather, they were thin, fleshy wings, like those of a bat. You, who exactly are you?" The Demon Snake King could no longer remain calm. The moment the other party spread his wings, his aura immediately soared, instantly suppressing him. This made him think of the Lunar King and the others. Instantly, a strong shadow rose up in his heart. These days, he had been dealing with those 8 freaks, and he couldn't forget them even if he wanted to. "You think you're worthy to know?" Yi Shuang said disdainfully. With a palm strike, innumerable stars instantly fell from the sky, forcibly tearing a hole in the sky. 15 stars of battle prowess. It was definitely 15 stars of battle prowess. Without another word, the Demon Snake King directly turned around and fled. In the Shattering Void tier, a difference of 1 star of battle prowess was a difference of heaven and earth, and that was a definite defeat. Moreover, his battle prowess was only 12 stars, which was a whole 3 stars lower than the other party's battle prowess. In that case, he would be suppressed with a flip of his palm. "Flee, flee, flee." He returned to the warship, and hurriedly urged the warship to set off while opening the warship's defenses. With him and the Absolute Saber's double defense, they should still be able to fight their way out. Yi Shuang didn't plan to pursue, either. She retracted her fleshy wings and stretched lazily, showing off her alluring curves. "Vixen." Hu Niu said with a pout and a frown. Niu hated those with good figures showing off in front of her the most. Ling Han pointed at the warship ahead, and said, "Why aren't you chasing? This lady only promised to help your family, but didn't say that I would help you fight the bandits." Yi Shuang laughed mischievously, and changed the topic. "It's not impossible for this lady to act, but what benefits do you have to give? We're friends, so isn't mentioning benefits too dirty?" Ling Han said righteously. "Hey, don't play this trick with this lady. If you tell this lady all your secrets, this lady can make a move and wipe out whatever 5 sects and Purple Moon Empire. How about it?" Yi Shuang tempted. Ling Han laughed, and said, "In your dreams. The 5 sects have deep roots, and who knows how many more awesome characters they have. And for the Purple Moon Empire, although Fatty Ma has never fought, being able to command the 8 kings, his strength must be terrifyingly strong. This lady is also very strong, okay?" Yi Shuang said, displeased. "Your current battle prowess is at most 15 stars. Wanting to sweep through the world, it's difficult." Ling Han shook his head. In a few years, Hellion Tianyun might be able to return to the peak, and battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Was he afraid or not? Yi Shuang snorted, and said, "If it weren't for the suppression of this world, this lady would only need to use 1/10,000th of my power to sweep through this realm. Isn't that nonsense? There are so many people in the divine realm, and any god can do it, so there's no need to trouble you." Blue veins popped on Yi Shuang's forehead, and she said, "Brat, do you believe that this lady will beat you up first? Don't think that your physique is tough. This lady has ways to turn tempered fine steel into soft fingers." Ling Han didn't want to excessively provoke this witch, and said, "Hee, today's weather isn't bad. It's sunny and windy, so let's drink some tea." "Tea doesn't taste good, let's eat meat," Hu Niu immediately said. Yi Shuang couldn't help but laugh, and said, "For Hu Niu's sake, this lady can't be bothered to bicker with you, but take a little notebook and count it in. How many times has this lady helped you until now? You'll have to return it in the future." Ling Han sighed, and said, "People say that favors are not to be repaid. Why is your awareness so low? If you don't accept it, come bite this lady." Yi Shuang puffed out her chest, and instantly, great waves surged. "Don't show off your breasts in front of Niu." Hu Niu was anxious. Why did everyone bully her for being small? Huh? The 3 were just about to descend when they saw a carriage coming from afar, but it wasn't on the ground, but in the sky. The carriage's legs were actually powered by a shattering void tier beast, shaped like a lion, emitting an aura that made heaven and earth collapse. Yi Shuang immediately frowned. This time, a strong enemy came. Her gaze passed over that shattering void tier beast, as if she could penetrate the obstruction and directly see inside the carriage. The person inside was the great enemy. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 822. Ling Han, however, cupped his hands, and said with a smile, "Lord Lunar King has arrived, sorry for not going out to meet you, Gedgedgedge." An extremely charming laughter came from the carriage, making one's heart feel as if it was being caressed by countless little hands, itchy and limp. "Great bewitching spirit," Yi Shuang and Hu Niu said at the same time. The carriage opened, and a charming and extremely beautiful woman walked out. In terms of appearance, Yi Shuang could match her, but in terms of charm, although Yi Shuang was similarly charming, she was overshadowed by her. This was a natural beauty, born to overturn the world, a true source of calamity. Naturally, it was the Lunar King. "Yo, little brother." The Lunar King greeted him coquettishly. Then, she placed her hands on her waist and made an incredibly seductive pose that would make anyone blush. "Hey, have I become younger and more beautiful again?" Ling Han's understanding of women was once idiot level, so he only realized after 10,000 years that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden actually liked him. However, after being in close contact with Hellion Sun Shui for a long time, he obviously improved slightly. And, the Lunar King is indeed getting younger and more beautiful day by day. He praised. This great bewitching spirit once fought with Ma Duobao over the issue of youth, so he had to go along with her on this topic. Although he could take a beating now, with an elite at the level of the Lunar King, even if she couldn't kill him in one move, it probably wouldn't be too hard to hurt him. The Lunar King was instantly all smiles, then walked towards Yi Shuang, and said, "May I ask how I should address this big sister?" "I dare not be what big sister?" Yi Shuang's pretty face immediately turned cold. You're much older than this lady, how is that possible? You can tell from this skin, big sister must be at least several tens of thousands of years older than this king. The Lunar King really dared to say it. The veins on Yi Shuang's forehead immediately bulged, but she also revealed a smile, and said, "I heard you guys were buried for over 200,000 years, TSK, that's much older than this lady. You're the big sister, no, not big sister, but old granny." The Lunar King giggled, and said, "This king only slept for a while. With the time fluids slowing down the flow of time, I slept at most for a few years. I dare not be called old granny, better return it to big sister." "Sister. You are the big sister, your whole family are big sisters." The two women glared at each other, their anger rising. Ling Han didn't understand. It was just a form of address, what was the big deal about it? These two girls looked like they were about to fight. That destructive power would definitely surpass when Yi Shuang fought the Beast Snake King previously. It could even be said that it wasn't on the same level. Hu Niu, however, was excited, and said in a small voice, "Fight, hurry up and fight, it's best if you can kill them all." Ling Han advised, "Lord Lunar King, it must have been a long journey, why don't you go down and have a cup of tea?" Scram! The two women attacked at the same time, and with a bang, Ling Han was sent flying hundreds of kilometers away. Fuck, he was just trying to mediate the fight. How did he end up in such a predicament? Come, let me have a taste of your strength. Jejij, this king has the same intention. The two women rose into the air again and began their battle. The two girls weren't completely muddle-headed and still knew to avoid bringing disaster to the imperial capital below. However, they displayed all of their trump cards as soon as they made their move and fought fiercely in the sky. Blood devours the world. 8 Crescent Techniques. The two women clashed, and instantly unleashed powerful moves that were extremely terrifying. Ling Han was dazzled. This was the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier. In comparison, the Beast Snake King was practically like a child. Their battle prowess should be 15 stars, about the same as the 15-eyed Corpse King and the giant Silver Spider. There's obviously only a difference of 3 stars of battle prowess, yet they're so much stronger than the Beast Snake King. I really can't imagine how terrifying that old dragon's 20 stars of battle prowess is. Ling Han mumbled. However, since one could appear with battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, why couldn't there be a second, or a third? Who knew if the 5 sects had sealed such an elite? Hopefully not. After fighting for a while, the sky suddenly became quiet. The Lunar King and Yi Shuang landed one after another. Their clothes were somewhat tattered, revealing their snow-white skin, and even a glimpse of spring could be seen. However, the two women immediately took out cloaks from their spatial spirit tool and put them on, so that Ling Han couldn't feast his eyes anymore. If this lady could go all out, I could crush you to death with a single finger. Yi Shuang's anger still hadn't dissipated. The Lunar King smiled, and said, "You're indeed someone from the divine realm, but under the suppression of the realm's power, you only have 15 stars of battle prowess, which means that you broke through after reaching 15 stars, not stronger than this king." Ling Han was puzzled, and interrupted, "Shouldn't immortals descend to the lower realm have battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier?" Yi Shuang shook her head, and said, "The suppression of the realm's power isn't so simple. In reality, the limit that this realm can accommodate is the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but what kind of battle prowess you can reach at the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier depends on your own talent. Ling Han finally understood, and said, your tier is suppressed to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but your battle prowess isn't suppressed to 20 stars of the Shattering Void tier. There was a huge difference between the two. For example, Helian Rong and Wenren Jia were both in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but one had 10 stars of battle prowess, and the other 11 stars. If they fought to the death, Helian Rong would soon be killed by Wenren Jia, and wouldn't even be qualified to drag the other down with him. It was precisely because of this that even immortals descended to the lower realm couldn't suppress Helian Tianyun. That old dragon reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier's battle prowess at the time, and was indeed enough to sweep through this realm. Oh, right, Lunar King, the Middle States War is so urgent, why did you come here? Ling Han hurriedly changed the topic, not wanting the two girls to bicker again, and even come to blows. Oh, the 5 sects. They were already defeated, and there won't be any change even if I come again, the Lunar King said very proudly. I heard that you established a nation, and under His Majesty's suggestion, this king came to help you train the army. That's really great. Ling Han was pleasantly surprised. He only secretly learned some secrets of training troops from the Purple Moon Empire, but was far from proficient. Jejij, then how should little brother repay this king? The Lunar King smiled charmingly, extremely flirtatious. You're not allowed to have any ideas on Ling Han. Hunyo immediately cut in front of Ling Han and spread her arms, looking like she was protecting her food. The Lunar King instantly laughed impudently, laughing so hard that her breasts surged, making Hunyo and Yi Shuang curse at the same time as the Great Demoness. The Great Demoness wouldn't stay for a long time. She brought a team of 100 people, and they were all elites among elites. Not only were they proficient in the art of training troops, their own strength was also extremely powerful, enough to help the Great Ling Empire sweep through the East and South region. Thus, the Lunar King invited Ling Han to the Middle State. The great battle with the 5 sects was about to begin, and Ma Duobao might even personally take part. Chapter 823. A large man turned around, and shouted at the green-haired young man, "Who do you think you are? How dare you meddle in my business? How dare you speak to young Master Wuk like this?" A young man wielding a spear leaped out from among these young men. "I'll send you on your way." He raised his spear and attacked. The large man hurriedly drew his saber to parry. Ding, ding, ding. They had only exchanged a few blows, and his expression changed drastically. Though they were both at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, his battle prowess was much weaker than his opponent's, and he immediately fell into a disadvantageous position. Moreover, his opponent's spear was deadly, and his killing intent was boiling. He could clearly feel the threat of death. So powerful. He was stunned, and hurriedly roared. He began to fight desperately. Flashes of divine light burst out from his body, and his body suddenly expanded a good few times, turning into a giant that was 9 meters tall. Pooh! His palm was pierced by a spear, but it was as if there was no blood in his body. Not even a drop of blood spurted out from this spear. Moreover, it was as if he could not feel pain. He raised his saber with his other hand, and slashed at the spear-wielding man. The spear-wielding man couldn't help but be astonished. He hurriedly flicked his spear, and sent his opponent flying, dispersing the might of this strike. Then, an expression of realization appeared on his face, and he said, "You did not enlarge your body, but merely filled it up. You look bigger, but you are actually not an extension of your body. Thus, you were completely unaffected by my spear, and did not even bleed. So what if you know?" The burly man sneered. "My body is so huge right now. Do you still think you can hit my vitals? Do you know where my vitals are?" "Ha, I don't need to know where your vitals are. Under my frost spear, only death awaits you." The spear-wielding man activated the spear in his hand, and instantly, divine patterns bloomed on it. Boundless cold chi circulated, and it was as if the surrounding space was about to be turned into an ice cavern. The burly man's teeth involuntarily chattered, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. A level 4 divine artifact. This spear-wielding man was clearly under the command of the green-haired youth, but how could a subordinate possess a level 4 divine artifact? What kind of concept was this? This group of youths was incredible, and their backgrounds were definitely shocking. Hee, it's just a misunderstanding, another burly man said. Since these two people are your friends, please forgive us for our recklessness. The spear-wielding man turned to look at the green-haired youth, yet the latter only smiled coldly, and said, "You dare to offend a beauty, and you still want to live?" He instantly understood, and his spear unleashed its might, sweeping towards the 4 burly men at the same time. He was now incredibly powerful, and the might of his spear transformed the surroundings into a world of ice and snow. This might had even surpassed the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and added with his own battle prowess, it was equivalent to 2 great elites joining forces. Even though it was 1 against 4, he still had the upper hand, and it looked like he would only need a few moves to completely annihilate the 4 burly men. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. It was already very difficult for cultivators to possess battle prowess of 1 star, but god tools were different. That was because they could be nurtured by elites, and then bestowed upon their juniors to use, and they were completely capable of surpassing 4 or 5 stars. He was even more expectant. When the divine demon sword caught up to his cultivation level, how astonishing would its might be? It was comparable to divine metal, and definitely not as simple as merely possessing the ability to grow. Not long after, the 4 burly men had all been slaughtered. The spear-wielding man put away his weapon, and respectfully returned to stand behind the green-haired youth. This was astonishing. It should be known that this spear-wielding man's battle prowess was extremely astonishing, and he was completely capable of standing on his own. Now, however, he was like a servant. The green-haired youth walked over, and flashed a charming smile at Shui Yenyu, saying, "Miss, I've frightened you." Ling Han shook his head in his mind. It seemed that he had gained another rival in love. This wife of his was truly a super femme fatale. No matter where she went, people would strike up a conversation with her. Moreover, all of them possessed high statuses. Previously, it had been Zhao Luan, and now it was a green-haired man. Most likely, his background wouldn't be inferior to Zhao Luan's. "Excuse me, but don't get so close to me," Ling Han said as he raised a hand to block the green-haired man. "How dare you!" The spear-wielding man immediately jumped out, and his spear was drawn again as he pointed it at Ling Han. "Zhang Sun, don't be so agitated." The green-haired youth smiled faintly, and lightly pressed down on the spear-wielding man's spear. "I'm Xia Wuk, and I'm from the tyrannical Xia majestic empire of the Great Length Star." The spear-wielding man immediately put away his spear, and respectfully said, "My apologies, young master. Please forgive me." Xia Wuk merely waved his hand, and said to Ling Han and Shui Yenyu, "How should I address you two?" "Ling Han, Shui Yenyu, my wife," Ling Han replied with a smile. Xia Wuk's expression involuntarily froze, and a dark expression appeared on his face. It wasn't that he hadn't seen beauties before, but this was the first time he had seen such a seductive beauty like Shui Yenyu. Adoration and possessiveness immediately welled up in his heart upon seeing her. However, Shui Yenyu was already taken. A mocking expression involuntarily appeared on his face as he glanced at Ling Han. How could a nobody like him be worthy of such a beauty? He chuckled coldly. Anyone with eyes would be able to tell who was better between him and Ling Han. He was naturally filled with confidence regarding this. He was the 67th son of the current emperor of the tyrannical Summer Majestic Empire, and he was also the youngest son. However, he was also the most outstanding descendant. He was only 507 years old, yet he had already reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. More importantly, he had been sent into a small world when he was in his 40s. In that small world, he had successfully split open the sky, and he had cultivated every cultivation level to perfection. He was filled with ambition, and he wanted to become the strongest prodigy in history. The situation here is unknown, and it could be extremely dangerous. Why don't we travel together? That way, we can take care of each other, he suggested with a smile. Shui Yanyu shook her head, and said, we've only met by chance, so there's no need for that. She naturally knew what he was thinking. However, her heart was already tied to Ling Han, so she naturally didn't want to cause any trouble. The two of them started to walk away, yet the spear-wielding man immediately stepped forward and blocked their path. Zhang Sun, what are you doing? Xia Wuk asked coldly. The spear-wielding man hurriedly took a step back before kneeling on one knee, and saying, I was too rash. Miss Shui, we'll meet again, Xia Wuk said with a confident smile. Shui Yanyu didn't reply. Meanwhile, Ling Han waved his hand without even turning his head around. Young master. The spear-wielding man scooted over. He was slightly confused. Young master clearly liked this woman, so why didn't he just make her stay? With young master's identity, status, and talent in cultivation, what kind of woman wouldn't throw herself at him? You don't understand, Xia Wuk said with a meaningful smile. What was the point of obtaining a woman that he could obtain too easily? Did he lack beautiful women? However, a woman as charming as Shui Yanyu was like a fine wine that needed to be savored slowly. Not only did he want to obtain Shui Yanyu's body, but he also wanted to obtain her heart. Thus, he naturally didn't need to be overly hasty. We'll meet again by chance. He waved his hand, and said, follow me. Chapter 824. After this little interlude, Ling Han and the Lunar King were on their way. They quickly arrived at the region wall, but discovered that the region wall actually didn't exist anymore. I found it troublesome, so I broke it, the Lunar King said indifferently. Powerful. This should have been built with the help of the people of the Divine Realm after the reckoning 10,000 years ago, but she actually destroyed it, which showed how powerful this great demoness was. They were unimpeded, and saw that this was already the territory of the Purple Moon Empire. The flag of the Purple Moon Empire was stuck above the city ahead, fluttering in the wind and appearing very mighty. Another 10 days later, they arrived at the capital city of the Purple Moon Empire. Ma Duobao personally came out to greet them, giving enough face to Ling Han. Brother Ma, why do you think so highly of me? Ling Han asked, puzzled. With the other's strength, even if the sect leaders of the 5 great sects came, he wouldn't need to give them a second look. Ma Duobao laughed loudly, and said, Tanned brother, I never misjudge people. You're destined to stir up a storm, and your achievements definitely won't be below mine. Ling Han was extremely pleased. He was also confident that he could achieve supreme achievements in the future, but before reaching such heights, he was treated as an equal by someone whose strength was far above his. This naturally made him feel very comfortable. But, Brother Ma, can you stop calling me Tanned brother? Sure, Tanned brother. Ma Duobao readily accepted, but was a standard example of not changing despite repeated admonition. Ling Han was speechless, and said after a while, Brother Ma, on the use of power of the nation, I can give you some advice. Oh, let's hear it. Ma Duobao didn't look down on Ling Han. Ling Han brought over all the information he heard from Yi Shuang, causing Ma Duobao to immediately sink into contemplation. Your Majesty, our failure in splitting open the sky last time was your problem. The Lunar King cracked her fingers. You damn fatty, you're really unreliable. Ma Duobao hurriedly raised his hands, and said, even if I learned the correct posture last time, splitting open the sky would still fail. Jie. The Lunar King stared at Ma Duobao with a dangerous gaze, but did not make a move. Ma Duobao sighed and said, just the last time, this king nearly exploded from the power of the nation. Even if the power of the nation could be strengthened by 10 times, this king would not be able to withstand it. The Lunar King was startled, and after a while, she suddenly jumped up, grabbed Ma Duobao's face, and said, "You turned yourself into a damn fatty. Are you cultivating some strange cultivation technique to increase your endurance? My beloved subject is indeed smart." Ma Duobao's face had already been squeezed until it was completely deformed, but he was still as amiable as ever. He chuckled and said, "Back then, we had yet to unify the sea region, but we had already reached our limits, so we did not let you go on another expedition into the sea region. Unfortunately, my strength is still not enough to split open the sky. So, this time, this king recultivated my physique to be able to withstand even stronger power of the nation." The Lunar King instantly thumped her hands and stamped her feet, and said, "Give me back my handsome and dashing emperor. Although the damn fatty is somewhat pleasing to the eye after a long time, it's not as comfortable as the original emperor." She immediately scuttled to Ling Han's side, picked him up, and said fiercely, "Little brother, don't ever learn from that damn fatty. This king does not want to meet another damn fatty." Ling Han hurriedly raised his hand, and said with a smile, "Definitely, definitely." He indeed did not want to become a damn fatty. However, what cultivation technique did Ma Duobao actually cultivate, to actually increase his physique by fattening his physique? After improvement, perhaps just the power of the nation of the middle state alone would be able to fill me to death again. Ma Duobao stroked his chin. From Ling Han's experience, the tree totem and gathering the hearts of the people were enough to increase the power of the nation tenfold. The middle state was the holy land of martial art. One state could rival 4 regions, and if the power of the nation was increased tenfold, then the effect would definitely be 2 times, or even 3 times, more than the entire continent united before. Although his physique had increased, was it as strong as 2 or 3 times? Let's give it a try first. Ma Duobao immediately began the creation of the totem. This represented the image of a nation, so he had to consider it carefully. Now, the Purple Moon Empire had already occupied more than 90% of the land in the middle state, and there was only a small area that the 5 great sects had yet to change their flag. However, the 5 sects were all located not far from each other, and they could reinforce each other, so it would be extremely difficult to break through. In such a small area, over 100 shattering void tier elites were gathered, and there were also great killing weapons like the absolute saber and the mountain and river axe. It was definitely not easy to deal with, and Ma Duobao had to personally act. The final great battle was not far away. Taking advantage of the fact that the battle had not started yet, Ling Han decided to make a trip to Cold City first. There were 2 cold spear associations there, and it involved a few of his disciples, so there was a need to clarify. He brought Zhu Xian, Hun Yo, and the others with him, and arrived at Cold City after a few days. Before this, Ling Han only knew that the Cold Spear Association would be in Cold City, but he did not have a very deep impression of where Cold City was. Only when he arrived here did he involuntarily reveal a dazed expression, as if he had traveled through time and returned to the past. Cold City was the eternal light city of 10,000 years ago, and also the place where he lived. He had never thought that after 10,000 years, this city would still be preserved, and had not been destroyed. Ling Han could still recognize that some of the damage on the city walls were exactly the same as they had been 10,000 years ago. "Ling Han, what's wrong?" Hun Yo asked, shaking his hand. "It's nothing." Ling Han broke into a smile, and led Hun Yo into the city. He headed straight for the Cold Spear Association. However, there were a total of 2 Cold Spear Associations in Cold City. One was in the south of the city, and was called the Southern Spear Association, while the other was in the north, and was called the Northern Spear Association. The 2 Cold Spear Associations both claimed that they were the real Cold Spear Association, and often fought against each other, and were as incompatible as fire and water. Ling Han entered from the East City Gate, and the distance between the 2 Cold Spear Associations was more or less the same. He fished out a copper coin, smiled, and said, heads to the Southern Spear Association, tails to the Northern Spear Association. The result was tails. He walked neither hurriedly nor slowly, but the city was only so big. Not long after, he still arrived at the Northern Spear Association. I want to see someone who can speak, Ling Han said to the guard at the entrance. Who are you? The guard countered, a disdainful smile on his face. This was natural. Just anyone would run over and ask to see their boss. What did they take their boss to be? Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, I'm called Ling Han. You can just go and report like this. Ling Han. The guard was startled. The members of the Cold Spear Association obviously understood that the meaning of their existence was to collect anything related to Ling Han, and obtain it at all costs. Of course, this Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor from 10,000 years ago, and not this youngster in front of them. In the hearts of every member of the Cold Spear Association, the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago was a supreme existence, like a god that could not be profaned. This person actually dared to call himself Ling Han. This was too despicable. He glanced at Ling Han, and said, all right, I'll go in and report for you. It'd be strange if they didn't invite an expert to beat this guy until even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. Chapter 825. Ling Han waited at the door. So many years had passed anyway, so he didn't mind waiting a little longer. Hun Yo, on the other hand, kicked a rock out of boredom. Pa, she seemed to be a bit addicted, kicking harder and harder, finally causing trouble. Aya, who is it, daring to sneak attack this young master? A young man walked over while holding his forehead, grimacing in pain. Hun Yo saw and instantly stuck out her tongue, hiding behind Ling Han, then pointed at Zhu Xian'er and said, it's this woman who hit you with a rock. Nyo saw it clearly. Who would suspect a child? That young man followed Hun Yo's finger to Zhu Xian'er, and was just about to fly off the handle, but immediately revealed a stunned expression. This woman was too beautiful. Her beauty was unparalleled in absolute Cold City. In an instant, it seemed like his forehead didn't hurt anymore. He hurriedly put on what he thought was his most elegant smile, and said, I'm Feng Yishou, what's Mrs. name? Zhu Xian'er only glanced at him indifferently, and said, meeting by chance, just passers-by, no need to report your name. Character, I like it. Feng Yishou turned his face and said to himself, then turned back, his smile even brighter. Being able to meet in the vast sea of people, isn't this a kind of fate? Miss, your beauty is too dazzling, my eyes can only feel your existence. Zhu Xian'er directly ignored him, lest he took advantage of the situation and pestered her endlessly. Miss, your beauty is poison, but I gladly endure it. I've been conquered by you, please let me use the rest of my life to love you. Feng Yishou blurted out words of love one after another, definitely a veteran in the brothel, not repeating a single word. With his handsome appearance and sweet mouth, he believed that there would be countless women who would willingly jump into his gentle trap. Unfortunately, this had no effect on Zhu Xian'er, and instead made her expression colder and colder. Idiot, why so much nonsense, just knock her out and carry her home. Hun Yo couldn't go on anymore, and jumped out to give advice. This isn't too good, right? Feng Yishou scratched his head, smiling foolishly. Trust Nyo. Hun Yo encouraged. Feng Yishou clapped his hands and said, let's do it. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. What do you want? Feng Yishou immediately shuddered and said, I have no interest in men. Don't play dirty jokes with me. Damn, is this guy a clown? Ling Han snickered coldly, and said, since you've said so, then I'll have to play with you. You, don't be rash. I'm not that kind of person. Furthermore, I'm very powerful, so don't ask for trouble. Feng Yishou hurriedly readied his sword, his expression as if to say, you're a pervert, don't come near me. Ling Han reached out and grabbed at the other party in an extremely casual manner. Damned pervert, move. Feng Yishou struck out with his sword. Xiu, a sword ray slashed out, slicing towards Ling Han's wrist. Although this person was inexplicably unreliable, he really did have some skill. There were not many people who could condense sword radiance at this age. However, compared to Ling Han, the two of them were not on the same level at all. Ling Han bent his hand and grabbed the other party's wrist. He said with a smile, "Guess, I'll steam you or braise you." "Mother." Feng Yishou's whole body was covered in goosebumps, and he hurriedly exerted force to struggle free, but Ling Han's hand was like an iron hoop, making him unable to move at all, and could only stare helplessly. "Don't call me mother, call me big brother, and I'll let you go," Ling Han said with a smile. "You think you're worthy of this young master calling you big brother?" Feng Yishou snorted, and with a shake of his left hand, another sword actually appeared, stabbing towards Ling Han. Ling Han let go, and then grabbed at Feng Yishou's left hand. "Pa!" He caught it head-on. Feng Yishou turned pale with fright. How could this person's attack be so fast? He roared angrily, and his right hand slashed out again. This time, he used his full power, and even his hair stood up like needles. Sword intent materialized, and fiercely charged towards Ling Han. His opponent's physique was extremely tough, so his spirit was definitely not stable enough. If he was hit by this attack, he would definitely hold his head and groan. How could there be such a monster in this world, who had cultivated both physique and spirit to the extreme? Ling Han smiled slightly, and his sword heart moved. "Pa!" Feng Yishou's sword intent instantly collapsed, and the other also seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His face instantly paled, and even his expression was distorted, appearing to be in incomparable pain. He released his hand, and Feng Yishou curled up on the ground, his whole body convulsing. The attack on his spirit was not light. However, to him, this was no less than a kind of tempering. If he could endure it, the toughness of his spirit would definitely be able to advance a step further. Young Master Feng. At this time, two people walked out from the door. One was the guard who had previously gone in to make the report, and the other was a tall and slender old man. He looked to be in his 60s or 70s, and had a rather dignified bearing, but at this moment, his face was filled with agitation. With a quick stride, he rushed before Feng Yishou, and helped him up. He carefully examined him, and only when he discovered that there were no injuries on the other's body did he slightly calm down. The old man looked towards Ling Han, and a hint of coldness appeared in his eyes as he said, "Was it you who injured young Master Feng?" Ling Han smiled, and said, "The term injured is too inaccurate. It should be said that we sparred, and he was no match for me." "Humph, coming to my cold spear association and still daring to injure someone, how dare you," the old man said coldly. His right hand stretched out, and it instantly turned green, exuding a metallic texture, with multiple vein-like patterns flashing on it. This old man's cultivation level was in the deity transformation tier, and his strength was really not low. Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back, and said, "Your status is also not low. Then let me ask you, do you have any impression of the names Jiang Yu Feng, Yun Yong Wang, Kang Xiu Yuan?" "Humph, it's useless even if you bring out the most powerful backer. Today, no one can save you." The old man leaped out, and struck out towards Ling Han. Who, before the palm had even arrived, a gust of wind had already arrived. Origin power was oppressive, and the destructive power was extremely shocking. Ling Han pressed out with his right hand, and the old man was instantly sent flying. Peng, 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 peng. At least a dozen or so walls were broken by him before he finally stopped, and directly fainted. This time, he should really be taken seriously, right? Teng, teng, teng. Many people rushed out from the manor, and surrounded Ling Han, but none of them made a move. Humph. A terrifying aura circulated, and a figure also walked out. "Greetings, seventh elder." Everyone half knelt in greeting. That was a white-haired old man, but his spirit was hale and hearty, and his eyes shone brightly. He stared at Ling Han, and said, "Young man, you are quite courageous, to actually dare to come to the Cold Spear Association and behave atrociously." Behave atrociously? Ling Han shook his head. I was only defending myself. However, my patience is limited. If no one is willing to have a proper discussion with me, then I can only first knock you all over, and let you all calm down. Chapter 826. How arrogant. You're just a little deity transformation tier. The seventh elder sneered. Young man, you're too proud. Let this old man teach you how to be a man. Ling Han said, you're quite arrogant. Don't be a frog at the bottom of a well, thinking that the world is so big. You should know that there are always people better than you. Ha ha ha. The seventh elder was so angry that he laughed. If their ages were exchanged, then what he said would make some sense, but now a young man was actually teaching him a lesson, making him speechless. His eyes turned cold, and he didn't bother to say anything more to Ling Han. Otherwise, he would really be angered to death, so he directly reached out to grab Ling Han. He was at the heaven tier, so it was easy for him to deal with a junior in the deity transformation tier. There was no need for him to go to the sky to fight. His opponent couldn't fight back at all and would only be taken down in one move. Naturally, he couldn't cause any damage. He reached out with his right hand, and the will of martial art of the heaven tier spread, forming a terrible pressure. Weaker deity transformation tier warriors even directly lay down under this pressure. Ling Han didn't dodge. This was very normal for others. When a heaven tier elite made a move, would there be any room for this kid to dodge? Under the pressure of the will of martial art, he naturally had the right to be captured. When the old man's palm reached him, Ling Han moved. His speed was extremely fast, and he flicked the old man's palm. The seventh elder's expression suddenly changed. Although his opponent's strength wasn't as strong as his, the will of martial art was extremely frightening. It turned into a needle that pierced into his body, making him feel pain. He took 7 steps back and raised his hand, but found that his hand was trembling, and he couldn't even clench it. Too frightening. Was this young man a monster? A casual attack almost disintegrated his battle strength. Hey, why did the seventh elder stop? I don't know. Just now, the seventh elder rushed over and then retreated. Did he block the seventh elder's attack? Are you kidding me? With the seventh elder's cultivation, he almost stands among the strongest in the world. How could he not take care of a young man? Everyone was talking about it. With their eyesight, they naturally didn't know what had just happened. Ling Han smiled and said, how about it? Can we sit down and have a good talk? The seventh elder stared at Ling Han for a long time before he finally said, you are too insignificant to the Cold Spear Association. This old man cannot stop you, but that does not mean that no one can. What? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. How could they believe that even the seventh elder couldn't block this young man? This guy was at most 20 years old, how could he be so strong? Could it be some old monster who could maintain his youthful appearance? Ling Han smiled and said, I can't be bothered to wait here for you all to come out one by one. Finished speaking, he started walking towards the mansion. Halt! Everyone shouted loudly. How could outsiders be qualified to enter the Cold Spear Association? This was blasphemy. You can't stop him. Let him in, and there will naturally be people who will teach him how to behave, said the seventh elder. Everyone nodded. The Cold Spear Association had no lack of elites. Even if Heaven tier elites could not stop Ling Han, could it be that Shattering Void tier elites could not as well? Not long after, peng, peng, peng sounds were heard from inside. A battle should have broken out, but after a while, there was no more movement. After another while, an old man ran out with a bloody nose and swollen face. What, even the fifth elder was defeated? Everyone exclaimed in shock. This young man was a bit strong. The seventh elder hurriedly asked about the battle situation. How many moves did that Ling Han use to defeat the fifth elder? The fifth elder's face was completely red, and he paused for a while before saying, this old man was defeated by a little girl about 10 years old. He actually wanted to add some years to Hunyo's age to make his defeat slightly better, but she was really too young, so he really couldn't add any more years. Pooh! Everyone spluttered. This was the fifth elder, and his strength was even stronger than the seventh elder's, but not only did he lose, he had also lost to the little girl they had seen before. Who hadn't expected Hunyo? However, who would have thought that such a little girl was actually an elite? Pang! The sounds of battle were heard again from inside, and similarly not long after, another two old men ran out. Both of them were wounded, and one of them even had his face scratched. Third elder. Second elder. Everyone was shocked. Even these two elders were defeated. They had the title of the strongest battle prowess below the Shattering Void tier, yet they were still no match. Could it be that Ling Han and the others had the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier? But when they asked, the two elders were defeated by Ling Han and Hunyo respectively, and there was not the slightest bit of exaggeration. When they said that, the whole crowd fell silent. Ha 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 ha, I heard that someone barged into your fake cold spear association. It was at this moment that over a dozen people walked over. In the lead were 3 old men, and behind them were 11 youngsters. If Ling Han was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that one of the young girls was Mu Fei Yao. Obviously, these people were all from the Southern Spear Association. Nonsense, you guys are the fake Cold Spear Association. The people on the Northern Spear Association's side all rebuked. Which was the real Cold Spear Association? This was an overriding issue of principle, and it was even more serious than Ling Han barging into the manor. Bullshit, you guys from the fake Cold Spear Association are shameless. The people on the Southern Spear Association's side also started cursing. Whenever the two sides met, they would argue for a long time because of this issue. In the past, they even fought fiercely, almost causing both sides to be destroyed. Thus, the two sides later agreed that Cold City was a holy land, and definitely would not fight here. Moreover, because of Cold City's special status, the two Cold Spear Associations even agreed that if anyone dared to destroy Cold City, both sides would join forces to exterminate them. Come, you guys have encountered a problem, do you need our help? The Southern Spear Association said. Hang, we can solve it ourselves, we don't need your fake Cold Spear Association's help. The people of the Northern Spear Association were obviously unwilling to accept help, or else wouldn't they be suppressed by the other side? They also had this kind of confidence, because the first elder was an elite of the Shattering Void tier, and also the Northern Spear Association's #1 elite. In the depths of the manor, Ling Han and an old man were both sitting cross-legged, each with a cup of fragrant tea in front of them. Meanwhile, Zhu Xian'er and Hunyo were both sitting behind Ling Han. Zhu Xian'er was still fine, looking gentle and refined like a young lady from a noble family, but Hunyo could not sit still. She simply lay on the floor, supporting her small head with her hand as she stared blankly. That old man was naturally the Northern Spear Association's #1 elite, the First Elder. This First Elder was very calm, and did not start a fight. Instead, he invited Ling Han to sit down and drink some tea, and said, "Young friend, you are only 20 years old, and have already reached such heights. This kind of natural talent is really rare since ancient times. First Elder is too kind. I would like to ask First Elder for guidance on a matter, and I hope First Elder can tell me," Ling Han said very politely. "If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. May I know what matter young friend would like to ask for guidance on?" the First Elder asked. The founder of the Cold Spear Association. Chapter 827. Not only was the second echelon losing members, but the third echelon was also losing members. Ling Han was the only one left again. This caused everyone to feel amused. Was this guy a jinx? With him here, this team was going to be annihilated. No, 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 it was he who was too strong. Others could not hold on, but he could. The original team of more than 100 people had been reduced to less than 50 people, and they were still advancing with difficulty. The 4 great prodigies of the first echelon drew their weapons almost at the same time. Obviously, they did not dare to be careless and face these puppets with their bare hands. Otherwise, it was really possible that they would be swept out, and that would be too humiliating. Although they were extremely glorious, they could not afford to lose at the same time. Otherwise, the halo on their heads would lose its luster. It was very painful, Ling Han said in his mind. Previously, he had felt a little pain, and then it was a little pain. Now, it was really very painful. Being punched by a stone statue was like a child being heavily spanked on the bottom by an adult. It was just that painful. Fortunately, pain and injury were 2 different things. At present, he was still completely unafraid. But this was only the 4th stage. Most likely, when they reached the 5th stage, Ling Han would clearly feel the pressure. At that time, the attacks of the puppets would be a real threat to him. At the very least, they would be able to injure him. This was very inconceivable. It was clearly only the power of the early stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. This should be the power of regulations. However, in comparison, the power of regulations that these stone statues displayed had already surpassed the level of the mountain river tier. That was why they could possess such terrifying destructive power. The advancing speed of more than 50 people slowed down again. Only Ling Han's speed did not change. He was incredibly stable. Only he was in the 3rd echelon, and he began to close in on the 2nd echelon, becoming one of them. At this point, there were only 2 echelons left. The 5th stage, as expected, the stone statues possessed as many as 4 divine patterns. Immediately, over a dozen people in the 2nd echelon were instantly sent flying. Blood sprayed through the air. Fortunately, those who could reach this stage were all prodigies among prodigies, and they all had their own life-saving techniques. Thus, although their injuries were very severe, not a single person died. Ling Han also truly felt the pressure. When the fists of these puppets smashed over, even his physique could not bear it, as if nothing had happened. Instead, he was beaten until he started to bleed. The pain was very severe. Ling Han didn't take the attacks head-on. Instead, he unleashed his movement technique and strengthened his attacks. He unleashed his annihilating dragon star arrow, shattering the stone statues in the distance. Meanwhile, he used his fast technique to destroy the stone statues that were closer to him. After all, these stone statues had only increased their destructive power, and their defensive power had not increased in the slightest. Under his powerful attacks, his speed increased for the first time. He charged out of the 2nd echelon, and he was now rushing toward the 1st echelon. The spear-wielding man and the others had naturally left the stone statue formation long ago. They stared at Ling Han, their faces twitching uncontrollably. It was as if they had seen a ghost. This guy is far too freakish. In comparison, even Xia Wuk paled in comparison. There was no lack of prodigies in this world, and there would always be a higher mountain. Xia Wuk and the others all turned around to look when they sensed a 5th person closing in on them. However, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. After reaching their level, they had truly become arrogant. This wasn't arrogance, but rather the confidence of invincibility. No matter how many people there were, they would still have an invincible heart, and they would be able to suppress anyone that came their way. Thus, they had only treated the other 3 people as their opponents. They had never paid attention to the people in the 2nd echelon or below. Were they worthy? Now, however, someone had emerged from the 2nd echelon and was gradually catching up to them. However, this wasn't the important point. The important point was that this person was actually only at the high extreme of the mountain river tier. If he truly caught up to them, how could they endure it? Needless to say, Xia Wuk's face had already turned green. He hadn't taken Ling Han seriously before, yet Ling Han had caught up to them now. Wasn't this a slap to his face? He was a prodigy, and he had always been the one to slap others' faces. When had he ever been the one to be slapped in the face? He gritted his teeth and forcibly increased his speed. This was extremely taxing on him. If this was already the 10th stage, then he could just muster up his strength and charge out in a single breath. However, this was only the 5th stage. If he unleashed his full strength here, then he would definitely run out of stamina. It was difficult to say whether he would be able to walk out of this stone statue formation. However, this was even more unbearable for him to allow Ling Han to catch up to him. He knew that Shui Yanyu was definitely watching from the side. His pride wouldn't allow this. His battle prowess was truly powerful. Golden light radiated from his body, and even his arms had become a faint golden color. It was as if they had been forged from godly metal. He was completely unscathed as he took the attacks of the stone statues head-on. This kind of state naturally couldn't last for long. Thus, Xia Wuk unleashed his full speed and charged forward. He wanted to take advantage of this invincible state to increase the distance between him and Ling Han. Even if he exited this state later, he would still have enough time to recover. Stupid bird, Ling Han said in his mind. Xia Wuk was treating him as a formidable opponent, yet he didn't take him seriously at all. If he didn't form his 5th mountain river and become a 10-star genius, how could he possibly view him as a rival? Although Ling Han hadn't taken this step yet, he firmly believed that he could definitely become a rival. He had a feeling that this stone statue formation was most likely prepared for 10-star geniuses. After reaching the consummate level of the mountain river tier, each increase in power would allow one to pass a stage. 10 stars meant 10 stages. Therefore, no one should be able to pass through here except for him. Of course, he wasn't a 10-star genius. In fact, he was still very far from the consummate level of the mountain river tier. However, who told him to have a powerful physique and freakish recovery ability? Thus, there was a possibility that he could pass this stone statue formation. What he was more curious about was whether there would be any rewards for passing this stone statue formation. The 6th stage. The attacks of the stone statues became more and more violent. Power was only a part of one's battle prowess, and this saying was fully manifested here. However, this was also an extremely special situation. After all, cultivators definitely couldn't be like this. You were clearly only at the mountain river tier, so how could you possibly comprehend the regulations of the sun-moon tier? This wasn't a matter of time. Rather, it was a matter of cultivation level. At this stage, there was no longer such a saying as how many teams there were. After all, there were only 5 people left. Ling Han, Xia Wuk, Xiao Sisi, Su Jing, and Duan. These were the 5 great geniuses. Who would be the first super genius to be eliminated? Who would last until the end? Who would be able to charge out of the stone statue formation? The people outside were all incredibly curious. They could clearly leave first, yet none of them were willing to do so. They were all waiting here, determined to witness the final moment. The 6th stage was extremely stressful. Even Ling Han was slightly wary of the stone statue's attacks. As long as they landed a solid punch, even Ling Han would bleed. Even he was feeling this way, so the pressure on the other 4 people was naturally even greater. However, the other 4 people had an advantage in cultivation level. Regardless of whether it was in terms of power or battle prowess, they were all far superior to Ling Han. Thus, although their defenses were inferior to Ling Han's, they could make up for it with their powerful attacks. They wouldn't give the stone statues any chance to strike them. The 5 of them were sweating profusely. Right now, they were not only competing in strength, but also in willpower. Chapter 828. Peng, the rabbit flew extremely fast, and heavily smashed onto 8th Elder's face. It wasn't over yet. The rabbit had its own attack attribute, and with a flurry of claws, Eighth Elder's face was instantly scratched, and blood flowed. Everyone was speechless. At least the people of the Northern Spear Association knew that Hunyo was actually extremely powerful, but never would they have thought that a rabbit was also so powerful, able to put the Eighth Elder of the Southern Spear Association into such a sorry state. Io, scared Uncle Rabbit to death. Fortunately, you're not injured. The rabbit trembled all over, and finally breathed a sigh of relief, patting its chest with lingering fear. This made everyone exasperated. You definitely weren't injured, the one injured was that Eighth Elder. Poor Eighth Elder was also a Heaven Tier elite, so how could he be humiliated to such a sorry state in public? Also, how could a rabbit open its mouth to speak? Eighth Elder trembled in anger, pointing a trembling finger at Hunyo. I. He couldn't catch his breath, and almost fainted. Truly humiliating, he, a dignified Heaven Tier elite, actually ended up in such a sorry state, truly detestable and hateful. What old? Uncle Rabbit didn't even cry out for injustice. You old fart, your skin is really hard. You almost broke Uncle Rabbit's claws. Can you afford to pay for it? The rabbit glared at him with a fierce look. Eighth Elder instantly shifted his hatred onto the rabbit. This lowly rabbit practically had its own halo of mockery, making people gnash their teeth in anger once it opened its mouth. Die! He flew out, swatting at the rabbit. Little ancestor, save me, the rabbit screamed. It was only in the deity transformation tier, but its bloodline was powerful, so it could scratch and injure Eighth Elder previously. But now, in a head-on confrontation, how could it be a match? The rabbit ran quickly, and with a shio, hid behind Hunyo, then poked its head out, pointed at Eighth Elder with its claws, and said, Little ancestor, hit him. Hunyo rolled up her sleeves. Fighting and whatnot was her favorite. Eighth Elder's attack missed, and he immediately turned around, charging towards Hunyo again. With a punch, endless brilliance circulated, and martial art intent overflowed, extremely terrifying. Enraged, he no longer cared that he was in Hansheng and attacked with all his might. Right now, he wished that he could kill everyone in order to silence them. This way, no one would know that he had embarrassed himself. The attack was incomparably terrifying. Hunyo grabbed the rabbit with a backhand motion, and once again threw it at Eighth Elder. Fuck, why is it Uncle Rabbit again? The rabbit shrieked. Peng! It once again smashed onto Eighth Elder's face. Its bloodline was powerful, and its physique was also different from a normal rabbit's. This smash caused Eighth Elder to feel dizzy and disoriented, but it was completely fine. Shwa, 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 it once again scratched at Eighth Elder's face, and only then did it manage to escape. You. Eighth Elder pointed at Hunyo and Rabbit, and actually couldn't catch his breath. Instantly, his body tilted, and he slid onto the ground. Eighth Elder fainted. The people of the Southern Spear Association rushed up and exclaimed in surprise. All of them had strange expressions on their faces. In their eyes, Heaven Tier warriors were almost invincible in the world, but such a strong warrior was angered to the point of fainting by a little girl and a talking rabbit. Who could accept this? It was like a dream. Gej. Hunyo held her belly and laughed loudly, clapping her hands as hard as she could. Fun, really fun, and who's next to play with? Her gaze swept back and forth between Third Elder and Fourth Elder's faces, causing the two old guys to feel immense pressure. Just now, they saw Hunyo attack with their own eyes. Her attacks were without any fancy tricks, and could only be described with one word: speed. But it was this speed that made them feel shocked, and their hearts went cold. Although Eighth's strength was slightly weaker than theirs, it wasn't by much. If it were them, they would also suffer heavily. Ling Han laughed, and said, Now, there's still someone who wants to force me to change my name? The people of the Southern Spear Association dared to be angry, but did not dare to speak, but Eighth Elder fainted from anger, and the other two elders suddenly became mute, so what could they say? Let's go. Ling Han snapped his fingers. Let's go. Hunyo jumped up cheerfully, grabbed the rabbit's long ears, and dragged it away. Ah, you're abusing an animal, the rabbit screamed. Mu Fei Yao's beautiful eyes widened, her face full of shock. When she first saw Ling Han, the latter's strength was extremely weak, and she could crush him with a finger, but now that she just advanced into the flower blossom tier, the latter had already grown to a height that she could only look up to. Thinking of the time when she was spanked by Ling Han, her pretty face couldn't help but feel hot, as if her butt was also a bit itchy. Ling Han returned to the capital city of the Purple Moon Empire. A round trip took about a dozen days, and Ma Duobao should have also settled the totem's matter. It was time for the final battle with the 5 sections. He didn't want to miss such a good show. Sure enough, when he returned to the Imperial Palace, he saw that there was already a sword silhouette above the Imperial Palace. This was a totem, and Ling Han could sense it. Now, this sword had condensed a considerable amount of the people's will, enough to suppress a deity transformation tier elite. So powerful, only a few days had passed. However, the Purple Moon Empire was established much earlier than the Great Ling Empire. Now, it was only giving the citizens an object of faith, so it was naturally easy to condense the people's will, pushing the totem to a considerable height in a few days. The middle state was large in the first place, and added with the overall high level of martial art, it probably wouldn't be long before this totem could rival the Shattering Void tier. Hee, Tanned brother, it's as I thought. After forming the true power of the nation, just the middle state alone is enough to fill me up, Ma Duobao said with a sigh. Ling Han frowned, and said, Brother Ma, you recultivated your physique, and still can't bear such powerful power of the nation? How much power of the nation you can bear is determined by 2 aspects. One is your own cultivation tier, and the other is the toughness of your physique. In terms of cultivation tier, I'm already in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and it's impossible to improve further, so I can only strengthen my physique. My physique has already reached the level of 10th tier rare metal, but it's also reached the limit. Ma Duobao shook his head, appearing somewhat regretful. However, he immediately smiled, and said, however, compared to last time, the power of the nation I can accommodate has at least doubled, so there should be a 30% chance of splitting open the sky. Only 30%? Ling Han was surprised. Firstly, it was because of Ma Duobao's strength. The latter's battle prowess definitely surpassed 15 stars, and his physique also reached the level of 10th tier rare metal, which was practically invincible in the world. However, with such strength and physique, plus the support of the power of the nation, splitting open the sky still only had a 30% chance of success, which was even more shocking. What if it was him? Ling Han asked himself. As long as his tier advanced into the Shattering Void tier, then his physique would reach the level of godly metal, and the power of the nation he could accommodate would far, far surpass Ma Duobao's. His own battle prowess wouldn't be inferior either, and comparing the two, what were his chances of splitting open the sky? Chapter 829. Brother Ma, if it's impossible, why not leave it to me? Ling Han made a cutting gesture towards the sky. Splitting open the skies wasn't a joke. Heaven and earth had a spirit, and was an independent individual. Even so, it wouldn't be willing to fuse with a new individual, even if it was an upgrade. As the saying went, it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of an ox. This was the principle. If splitting open the skies succeeded, then so be it, but if it failed, heaven and earth would definitely bear a grudge, and they would be struck by lightning. Otherwise, how could the Purple Moon Empire be destroyed in the past? At worst, they could open it again after a while, and as they continued, who knew, they might succeed one time. They slept for hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps with the intention of avoiding the backlash of heaven and earth. Ma Duobao shook his head, and said, there's not much time left for us. If the higher-ups make a move, we'll be passive. When it was time to concoct the realm pill, people from the immortal realm would come, and although immortals could only descend to the shattering void tier, their battle prowess was definitely powerful, and they were basically impossible to kill. If they swarmed up by relying on numbers, how could they split open the skies? Ling Han nodded. What they lacked now was time. The next day, they broke camp and moved, charging towards the 5 sections. From a mortal's point of view, the 5 sects were separated by tens of thousands of miles, ridiculously far, but in the eyes of shattering void tier elites, this distance was only a day's journey. Thus, the 5 sects were actually very close, and it was very easy to support each other. When Ma Duobao arrived at the front lines, the remaining 7 kings all gathered, joining him and the Lunar King, and then set out towards the Heaven's Sword sect. Needless to say, the elites of the 5 sects would definitely gather at the Heaven's Sword sect to launch a great battle against the Purple Moon Empire. Besides the Heavenly Astral King, the Lunar King, and the Flame King, the other 5 kings were respectively the Great Water King, Justice Mountain King, Clear Sun King, Pure Golden King, and Eternal Peace King. The 8 of them all had battle prowess of 15 stars of shattering void tier, shockingly terrifying. Along the way, there were naturally people obstructing them, but the 8 kings attacked casually, obviously sweeping through them, approaching step by step towards the gates of the Heaven's Sword sect. There weren't many people in their group. Aside from Ling Han and the others, Ma Duobao only brought the 8 kings and 1,000 elite soldiers. However, these 1,000 elite soldiers were all high-level heaven tier elites, and added with the fact that they were proficient in combined attacks, their battle prowess was enough to rival high-level shattering void tier elites. The disciples of the Sky Sword sect were routed along the way, and soon, the army arrived at the mountain gate of the Sky Sword sect. He couldn't go any further because of the protection of the formation. This king is here. Pure Golden King walked out, took out a golden spear, and held it horizontally in front of his chest. His eyes turned into 2 golden stars, and a ball of light condensed on the tip of the spear. At first, it was only the size of an egg, but no matter how much he condensed it, it only became the size of a watermelon. Ling Han, on the other hand, felt his blood run cold. The power of this attack was absolutely terrifying. Of the 3 styles of black origin, the last style was called formation breaking. It required one to stand still and gather strength for several minutes. Once it was unleashed, one's strength would be completely depleted. If this was used in battle, it was simply courting death. If it could be used to break the defense of the formation, it was a wonderful move. Was there any defense in the world that could not be broken? It was just that the strength was not enough. Therefore, the name of formation breaking was worthy of its name. Pure Golden King's attack had the same effect. During battle, he would never use it against the enemy, but now that he had the protection of his teammates, he naturally had no scruples. It allowed him to slowly condense his strength and blast out the most powerful blow. At least 5 minutes later, Pure Golden King finally took a step forward, but with one step, he had already arrived in front of the defensive light shield formed by the formation and stabbed with his spear. Poof! The tip of the spear stabbed into the defensive formation, and suddenly there was an infinite brilliance, dazzling, making people unable to open their eyes. Boom! The ground was trembling, the Sky Sword Mountain was also shaking, and the light shield was on the verge of collapse, but in the end, it stabilized. As strong as Pure Golden King was, a blow that had been accumulating strength for 5 minutes actually failed to break the defensive formation. Ha 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 ha! The other 7 kings burst into laughter, one after another, all of them in a mess. Old 7, you have regressed. Why can't you destroy the defensive formation with one shot? Is it because you worked too hard last night? Alas, young people should know how to control themselves. Don't always think about that all day long. The 7 kings ridiculed one after another, mercilessly. Pure Golden King's face was solemn, and he said, "This formation is indeed much stronger than when we first came." Ma Duobao opened his mouth and helped his beloved general out of trouble, saying, "This is normal. After being swept by us in the past, the 5 major sects will definitely learn from the painful experience and strive to strengthen the defensive formation. Therefore, it is normal that you can't break this formation. It just blocked one blow from this king. Let this king come again, and within a day, I will definitely be able to break this formation, Pure Golden King said unconvinced. How can I waste so much time for you? Lunar King swayed with thousands of charm and walked out. Let this king do it. Fourth sister, let me do it. Pure Golden King refused to give in. What a joke, this was related to his face. What, you've grown up? Then should this king teach you a good lesson? Lunar King licked her red lips, her charming eyes like water, exuding a dangerous aura. Pure Golden King was suddenly shocked. Although this fourth sister was amorous and full of a big enchantress, her temper was very explosive. She even dared to hit the boss, then what was he? If he counted the number of times he was beaten in the past, it would definitely give him a psychological shadow. Okay, let me do it. Ma Duobao walked out with a big belly and smiled. This formation is not broken. Anyway, we just want to pass through. Just make an opening. Isn't this going in? Your Majesty, your pursuit is too low. Lunar King immediately objected. Yes, the boss is not domineering enough. Let's blast it open. The other 7 kings also echoed. Ma Duobao chuckled, with an amiable appearance. His small eyes narrowed into slits, and he said, Dear ministers, do you have any dissatisfaction with me? No. The 8 kings immediately shook their heads in unison. What a joke, this boss was usually very easy to talk to, but once he got serious, he would kill gods and Buddhas who blocked his way. Which one of them wasn't arrogant and unruly at the beginning? Weren't they all beaten into submission by Ma Duobao? It's good that there isn't. Ma Duobao said with a smile, and casually drew a few fingers. Kwang, a gap immediately appeared in this mountain-protecting formation. The light shield was cut open with a large hole, enough to accommodate an army. So strong. Ling Han was secretly speechless. Previously, the Pure Golden King wanted to break the formation, but Ma Duobao only opened a passage. The difficulty couldn't be mentioned in the same breath, but a casual stroke had such destructive power. It really made sense that Ma Duobao could become the boss of the 8 kings. He looked up, and the Heaven's Sword sect was already close at hand. Chapter 830. When was the last time he came to the Heaven's Sword sect? Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a dazed expression, as if he returned to 10,000 years ago, when he was invited by the Sword Emperor to come here to refine pills, and it was here that he swindled the 3 styles of black origin. 10,000 years passed, and this place didn't seem to have changed at all, as if it was yesterday. Woo! The horn sounded, and countless people flew out from various places in the mountains. This mountain guarding formation was broken, so the entire sect was obviously mobilized. The auras of elites rose and fell, frightening and astonishing. If these people joined forces and attacked together, would the vast lands instantly collapse? However, with the existence of the Eye of Heavenly Tao, it shouldn't be so, and it would definitely interfere to maintain the stability of this realm. For the Eye of Heavenly Tao, as long as the order of this realm wasn't destroyed, it wouldn't care no matter how many people were killed. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and Beast Snake King were both here, and counting them, the number of Shattering Void tier elites was actually in the hundreds. It could be seen that the 5 great sects should have used all their resources to fight a decisive battle to the death with the Purple Moon Empire here. After this battle, the world would be at peace. A feeling of disbelief rose up in Ling Han. This was too easy, wasn't it? Thinking again, the Purple Moon Empire certainly grasped overwhelming power. Even if Ma Duobao didn't make a move, the 8 kings already beat the 5 sects to a pulp, and in the end, they could only defend this last place. Now that a decisive battle happened, it seemed reasonable. Esteemed guests have come from afar, and I didn't go out to greet you. Forgive me, forgive me. An amiable-looking old man walked out. He was tall and slender, with a head full of white hair and a white beard, wearing a coarse hemp robe. When he walked out like this, even the Sword King and Azure Phoenix Divine Empress took a step back in unplanned unison, making way for him to take his place. Now, there were only 4 similarly white-haired old men, 4 men and 1 woman, that could stand side by side with this old man. They were definitely old antiques, and it was obvious that their vitality had declined. It was very strange. The 5 sects clearly had the time source fluid, which could seal the loss of their own life. After the reckoning, they could enter the immortal realm to break through, and then become immortals. Their lifespan would be terrifyingly increased. Ha, is this to deal with powerful enemies like us? Justice Mountain King sneered. It is impossible to break through to the immortal level in this world, so the longer one spends, the higher the possibility of advancing further in the Shattering Void tier, and increasing one's battle prowess to 15 stars, 16 stars, or even higher, the Flame King continued. However, 14 stars is a threshold. Every subsequent star is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even Shattering Void tier cultivators only have a lifespan of a little over 1,000 years. So what if they spend their entire life studying? Their natural talent is there for all to see. If they can only reach 12 stars of battle prowess in their prime, then even if they die of old age, they'll at most reach 14 stars. The 8 kings spoke one after another, not minding the 5 elders at all. Ha, I've long since heard that the 8 kings are heroic and matchless, and that their divine skills are unrivaled. Today, I finally get to see them for myself. The old man from before wasn't angry at all. Instead, he laughed and said, "How about we make a bet? A bunch of losers. What qualifications do you have to bet with us?" Sneered the 8 kings. "You don't dare." The elder provoked. Although the 8 kings were heroic, they would never act rashly. None of them spoke up. This time, they were here to pacify the 5 sects, so what bet? Yet Ma Duobao smiled, and said, "What bet? We're martial artists, so the bet is obviously on strength." The old man laughed. "Let's both sides send out 9 people to fight one-on-one. Whichever side wins 5 rounds, wins this bet." The 8 kings were all stunned. Fight 9 rounds? Did you know that the 8 kings plus Ma Duobao just happened to be 9 people, which also happened to be the strongest battle force of the Purple Moon Empire? This kind of one-on-one duel could be said to be the Purple Moon Empire's strongest suit. Using one's weakness to fight another's strength, so stupid, but the 5 sects had so many old foxes, so how could they all be stupid? Ma Duobao continued to ask, "What if we win, and what if we lose?" This was the key. Otherwise, it wouldn't hurt or itch even if they lost, so a bet was fine. The old man said, "If we lose, we'll pledge allegiance to the Purple Moon Empire, and you can deal with us however you want." With that said, even the 8 kings were moved. Did the other party have too much to eat, or was his brain damaged or kicked by a donkey? Ma Duobao smiled as if he didn't care, and said, "Then what if we lose? Within 100 years, no more fighting." The old man raised a finger. The conditions of this bet could be said to be extremely unfair. If the 5 sects lost, their lives would be dealt with at will, but if the Purple Moon Empire lost, they would only be unable to raise their troops within 100 years. For normal people, 100 years was a lifetime, but for Shattering Void tier elites, 100 years was only 10 years for normal people. Ma Duobao revealed a puzzled expression. The 5 sects could only rely on the number of Shattering Void tier elites. As the saying went, many ants could bite an elephant to death, and there was strength in numbers. However, he was obviously unafraid. Aside from himself, no one knew how powerful his strength was. Now, the 5 sects gave up their advantage in numbers, and wanted to fight one-on-one with them. This was really pitifully stupid. What was the reason behind this? The old man raised another finger, and said with a smile, "However, we have a restriction, this was the main point. That is, your majesty cannot participate in the battle. Ma Duobao couldn't participate in the battle, which indeed made the Purple Moon Empire lose a super battle force, but the problem was that the 8 kings were practically invincible. Up until now, aside from the giant silver spider in the Fire Country's ancient mining area and Yi Shuang Shuang, there shouldn't be any living shattering void tier 15 stars of battle prowess, right? Even if the 5 sects could find these 2, and the 8 kings lost these 2 matches, well, wouldn't they still be able to guarantee a steady victory in 6 matches? Strange. Do you dare? The old general said. Ma Duobao pondered slightly, then nodded, and said, all right, I accept this bet. After all, the other party had over 100 shattering void tier elites, and as long as a few escaped, they could wreak havoc in the world, which was enough to cause massive damage to the power of the nation. Thus, if they could subdue the enemy without fighting, this was the best strategy. The old man laughed, and said, since that's the case, then we'll send someone out first for the first match, and rotate for the next match. Such an exchange, your majesty can accept it. Yes. Ma Duobao agreed. And Yun, you'll fight in the first match, the old man said. Yes, the Sword King agreed. His figure soared into the air, stopping 100 miles above the mountain peak, and said, 8 kings, who will fight with me? I'll do it. The Lunar King also soared, standing beside the Sword King. The first match was obviously won by the Purple Moon Empire. The Sword King was indeed very strong, comprehending Sword Heart, but he hadn't reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and his battle prowess was only 11 stars. How could he rival the Lunar King? This wasn't a contest on the same level at all. Please. The Sword King wasn't afraid, and formed a sword seal in his hand, looking elegant and graceful. Chapter 831. Ling Han was very satisfied, because he himself did not use much power in this strike, and it was completely the might of the divine demon sword itself. It was clearly only a level 3 god tool, but because it was branded with his martial intent, it actually possessed might above its cultivation level, and could definitely rival a level 4 god tool. Even a god tool could surpass its cultivation level in battle. Shua, the remaining fierce fish hurriedly waved their tails, and turned to flee. Previously, Ling Han had only scraped off the fish's scales, and did not kill them, so these fierce fish had no scruples, but when they discovered that this person was not a great philanthropist to be trifled with, they naturally fled without a trace. So this is the #1 divine sword in the world. Shui Yenyu naturally saw Gu Jinhui, and knew that he had specially come to deliver the sword to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, and said, I owe him a great favor. Shui Yenyu smiled, and said, I definitely owe him a favor, but I believe that it is only in your hands that this sword can truly reach the pinnacle. For a sword forger, this is what they would think of the most. Otherwise, if it were to be kept in their own hands, it would only be a bright pearl gathering dust. Wife, you are getting better and better at talking. Your little mouth is really sweet, Ling Han said with a smile. He acted as if he was going to pinch Shui Yenyu's cheek, causing her to roll her eyes at him, extremely annoyed. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's have some stronger fierce fish so that this sword can be upgraded to the level of level 4 godly metal. Shui Yenyu looked into the distance, and her expression suddenly changed. She said, You jinx, in front of them, there was a large fish that was several thousand meters long. Though it was not the largest, the waves that it raised surged over, directly tossing Ling Han and Shui Yenyu out. They did not have the slightest ability to fight back at all. The power of this fish has at least reached the Sun-Moon tier, Ling Han said. The large fish approached aggressively. It opened its large mouth, and with a suck, all the seawater in the vicinity suddenly surged into its mouth. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were no exception, and were sucked in by the suction force. What are you waiting for? Ling Han shouted. The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly charged out. The power of the sun-moon tear surged, and he shot out a punch, compressing the seawater and forming a shock wave that continuously expanded towards the large fish. Pang! The large fish was instantly sent flying several thousand meters away. The power of this punch was extremely powerful, and even a hole had appeared in its body, from which blood seeped out. In pain, the large fish charged back angrily, and with a wave of its tail, raging waves swept out. The Azura Demon Emperor charged forward. Though he was pitifully small, his power was not inferior. He shot out a punch, and it collided head-on with the large fish, both of which were bounced back. The man and the fish battled fiercely. Neither of them was a true cultivator. One was a puppet, and relied on true origin stones and formation patterns to possess battle prowess of the sun-moon tier, while the other was blessed by nature, possessing a massive body and terrifying power. This was like an ant. How long would it need to cultivate before it could reach the same level of power as an ordinary person? The strength of the two of them was about the same, but the puppet had the advantage in that it could not feel pain. Moreover, its body was forged from high-grade godly metal, so it naturally had a huge advantage. After a few dozen exchanges, many of the large fish's scales had fallen off, and it was beginning to bleed. It was scared, and with a wave of its tail, it fled without a trace. Fuck your grandpa, little Azura, am really too powerful. The Azura Demon Emperor said proudly. He was able to defeat an opponent at the sun-moon tier. This was something that he had never imagined in the past. This was too awesome. When Ling Han walked over, the Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly swept away the smugness on his face. There was a fawning expression on his face, and he said, "Little Azura is really too grateful, Master. Master, you are like little Azura's second parent. You are the red sun in little Azura's life, and wherever it shines, it will shine brightly." He began to crazily flatter Ling Han, completely unaware of the meaning of corny. Enough, enough. Otherwise, I'm going to vomit. Ling Han hurriedly waved his hand, and Shui Yenyu pursed her lips into a smile. Only then did the Azura Demon Emperor shut his mouth in embarrassment. He felt as if he hadn't realized what Ling Han was trying to say. In any case, it was impossible for him to increase his strength through cultivation. Thus, he had been training his skills in flattery these past few days. It was rare for him to come across such a great opportunity to display his skills, yet he had never thought that he would be stopped just as he was about to speak. This made him feel slightly depressed. Why didn't Master allow him to display his skills to the fullest? After entering deep into the sea, this forest revealed its magnificent side. These gigantic seaweeds were no longer a single dark green color. Instead, they had become a riot of colors. There were purple, red, and orange, and the colors of the fish had also become rich and colorful. However, the threat of these fish had become even greater. That was because these big guys clearly didn't have the slightest fluctuation of origin power, yet they were born with divine patterns that gave them special abilities. There was a gigantic octopus that spat out ink when it came into contact with them, turning the surroundings pitch black. Not only could one not see their own fingers in front of them, even their divine sense was completely blocked. This made people completely blind, and they could only passively take a beating. There was a gigantic fish that had 5 colored spikes growing from its head. Ling Han saw it pierce through the body of another gigantic fish with a single strike, strangling it to death. There were also some that possessed lethal poison. They didn't need to hit their opponents at all. Wherever their bodies swam past, there would be a poisonous domain. Many gigantic fish directly flipped over, and were easily poisoned to death. This was a dangerous place. Big fish ate small fish, and small fish ate cultivators. Of course, when the big fish were eating, they wouldn't mind eating a few cultivators along the way, either. There were corpses of gigantic fish everywhere, as well as the remains of cultivators. Usually, only a hand, a leg, or a head remained, bobbing up and down in the sea. The cloud-piercing shuttle wasn't very useful in an environment of water. Thus, Ling Han didn't use this god tool. If he came across any gigantic fish below the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, he would let the Azura Demon Emperor deal with them. If he came across any stronger fish, he would hide in the Black Tower, and only come out when the situation had calmed down. The fish here were still somewhat valuable. Some of the bones of the fish were metallized, and their quality was comparable to godly metal of the same level. Thus, whenever he came across them, Ling Han would store them in the Black Tower. In the future, he could use them to increase the might of the divine demon sword. In a certain corner of the deep sea, Empress Wan Xing was currently facing off against an elder. Nearby them, there was a three-colored lotus that was in full bloom. Even in this kind of environment, one could still smell an incredibly serene fragrance. Unsurprisingly, this was a godly medicine. Otherwise, how could it have attracted Empress Wan Xing's attention? However, that elder was actually able to stand on equal footing with her, which meant that his strength was definitely extraordinary. They both stood with their hands clasped behind their back. There wasn't a single drop of seawater in the space of about 3 meters around them, demonstrating their powerful strength. They could even isolate themselves from the seawater in this place. "This is only a three-colored wind and fire lotus," the elder said. "It'll take at least several 100 million years for it to advance to the 7-colored level. It's completely useless to fairy, so why don't you give it to me? I won't take it for free. I'm willing to compensate you with 3 dragon fragrance pills. How about it?" The 3-colored wind and fire lotus was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. If a mountain river tier cultivator placed it in their Dantian world, they would be able to receive the nourishment of the divine lotus at all times. Not only would the speed at which they accumulated their cultivation level skyrocket, but the divine lotus was also a rare treasure of heaven and earth. One could also use the divine lotus to communicate with the Tao of heaven and earth, and even their comprehension of cultivation level would receive a shocking increase. However, when cultivators advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, the essence of the divine lotus would also be completely extracted, and it would naturally wither. This one was only 3-colored. If it reached the 5-colored level, it could be used by Sun-Moon tier cultivators, and if it was 7-colored, even heavenly body tiers would view it as a precious treasure. Chapter 832. The 8 kings' expressions changed at the same time, while the 5 sects let out thunderous cheers. Zhuo Qifang stood proudly with his hands still behind his back, and said with a smile, "Can you go any faster? Otherwise, you won't be able to catch up to me." Justice Mountain King's expression turned serious. Ma Duobao's evaluation of this person was very, very strong, using 2 varies in a row. Although he only showed terrifying speed just now, his battle prowess definitely wasn't weak, or else he wouldn't be worthy of Ma Duobao's evaluation. He crossed his hands, and endless might circulated. Power of regulation. Zhuo Qifang frowned. This is a bit troublesome. One move might not be enough to settle it. If he had said this before, no one would have believed him. Defeating the 8 kings was a completely unrealistic thing, and he still wanted to kill them in one move. However, after he had displayed his astonishing speed, his weight had suddenly become heavier, and people could not help but think deeply about it. Perhaps he really was extremely powerful. After all, there were still 5 levels between Shattering Void tier 15 and 20 stars, so why couldn't he be a 16-star, 17-star, or even 19-star or 20-star supreme? Justice Mountain King shouted sharply. Lightning flashed, and he charged towards Zhuo Qifang again, golden handprints dancing in the sky. Zhuo Qifang only moved his feet to dodge, moving freely in this golden light. However, Justice Mountain King also used the power of regulation this time, and unlike Ling Han who could only cast it on his left hand, it turned into lines that slowly weaved into a net, enveloping Zhuo Qifang within. Withdraw. Justice Mountain King snorted, and the net of regulation was withdrawn. Like fishing, Zhuo Qifang had no room to dodge. Zhuo Qifang smiled faintly, and extended a finger, pressing forward. Open. Wang, a faint radiance flickered on his finger, and the net of regulation immediately broke open. He walked out calmly, and said with a smile, "Just now was one move. I'll use another move to suppress you." He extended another finger, and a giant silver finger 3,000 meters long instantly appeared in the sky, pressing towards Zhuo Qifang. The giant finger streaked past, burning the air and destroying all things. 18 stars. Lunar King and the other 6 kings exclaimed at the same time, disbelief on their faces. The power of this attack actually reached 18 stars. Hong. As the giant finger descended, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The scorching sun lost its light and countless stars fell from the sky. Everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. Was this really something that a human could do? Wasn't this the power of a god? However, the eye of heavenly Tao did not appear, which meant that this was an attack unleashed by the peak of human Tao. A few powerhouses took action and swept away the dust in the air, only to see that the place where the Justice Mountain King originally stood was empty. There were no traces of him or any fragments of his body. "We have lost this battle," Ma Duobao said as he carried Justice Mountain Monarch in his hand. If he had not acted just now, Justice Mountain Monarch would have been heavily injured even if he did not die. An 18-star versus a 15-star. This was a crushing battle strength. Hee. Zhuo Qi looked at Ma Duobao and said, "Your battle prowess should have reached 20 stars, right?" The 8 kings were furious at the same time. This was their king. Normally, they could laugh and joke around, but they definitely wouldn't allow others to disrespect him. Ma Duobao, however, did not answer. Instead, he asked, "You should have come from the immortal realm, right? Just now, you also used the power of regulation, but it was very different from the world power of this realm." What? Everyone was startled. Coming from the immortal realm, this could explain why he was already in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier at such a young age, and his battle prowess even reached 18 stars. However, the problem was, why would the immortal realm send someone down at this time? Zhuo Qifang laughed loudly, and said, "As expected, I can't hide it from you. That's right, I indeed came from the immortal realm, and really want to fight with you. However, 20 stars of battle prowess, this is known as extreme battle prowess, and even I have no confidence in escaping unscathed." He admitted it. Ling Han's heart beat wildly. Now, it was very obvious why the 5 sects would set such a wager. The immortal realm definitely wasn't the only one that came down. Zhuo Qifang was against Ma Duobao alone, so there should be 5. Then, as long as they kicked Ma Duobao away, they could secure 5 victories. Who would have thought that the immortal realm would actually send someone down? To send a god down, the expenditure is too great, so only a few Shattering Void tier elites came. Zhuo Qifang explained kindly. "But this is enough. After all, we came from the immortal realm." Clear Sun King walked out, and said, "I'll fight in the next match." "Who will fight this king?" Xiao, a young woman, leaped out. She was similarly astonishingly young, and had phoenix eyes and a jade-like nose, as beautiful as a person from a painting. She had a slender figure, and her willowy waist could only be grasped with one hand. Her chest rose and fell slightly, forming a graceful curve. 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Needless to say, she was definitely a genius from the immortal realm, a genius fostered by the 5 sects of the immortal realm. In comparison, Su Xiuran, Small Sword Emperor, and Dong Ling, these lower realm geniuses paled in comparison. The difference wasn't just a little. The resources of the immortal realm were definitely far above that of the lower realm, and if the top-notch geniuses fostered couldn't reach such a standard, then it would be wrong, right? The problem was, did these two represent the strongest among the younger generation of the 5 sects? Xiao Miaoyan, the young woman, said indifferently. The young woman said faintly. Although her expression was calm, one could see a trace of deep disdain in her eyes. It was disdain. The lower realm, in her eyes, was a synonym for lowliness. A mere medicinal garden that provided them with realm pills naturally made her look down on them. Clear Sun King naturally didn't dare to have any more carelessness, and immediately used his strongest ultimate move. He didn't learn the thunderclap ninth heaven, but his body turned into flames, forming a sea of fire that burned towards Xiao Miaoyan. This was even hotter than the sun, forcing many shattering void tier elites to make a move to bind the high temperature within a certain area, or else it would cause a terrifying disaster. Xiao Miaoyan, however, was fearless. Two wings spread out behind her, which were as long as 300 meters, wrapping around her, completely fearless of the flames that seemed to burn the heavens. Cloud Phoenix Sect, although she didn't know what it was called in the immortal realm. Xiao Miaoyan made a move, and similarly, her battle prowess was astonishing. With a few moves, she suppressed Clear Sun King and pulled back a point. Next, the 5 sects sent out 2 more young geniuses, called Chen Wenshi and Guan Yang, who similarly had battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier, turning the score of the 2 sides into 4-4. Only the last match was left. If Ma Duobao could make a move, he would definitely be able to win for sure, but the other party had long set up this trap and excluded him. Not to mention that the 8 kings had already made a move once. Even if they could go on stage again, would they be a match for the geniuses of the immortal realm? I am Wu Gaoyuan, I wonder who will be the one to give me some pointers. The last person of the 5 sects was similarly extremely young. He was dressed in white, and had an elegant demeanor. Ma Duobao and the 8 kings couldn't help but frown. Could it be that they were really going to lose? If they lost, they would have to lie dormant for 100 years, and who knew how many changes would happen. When the time came, the immortal realm would open the passage and send down real gods, and there would be endless variables. They were unwilling. I'll go, Ling Han said. Chapter 833. Come on. To put it simply, Lu Xian was only in the divine transformation realm. If he went up there, wouldn't he be selling himself? This was no joke. If he was too weak, he wouldn't even be able to take one move. Just the aura that burst out of his opponent would be enough to kill him. Ma Duobao did not believe in Ling Han's realm, but he believed in Ling Han as a person. He only frowned and said, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Ling Han nodded. "All right." Ma Duobao never did things sloppily. He immediately nodded and said, "You're up for the last match." Big Brother Han. Zhu Xian'er pulled on Ling Han's hand, her pretty face filled with worry. He wasn't an ordinary person, but a prodigy that had descended from the immortal realm. He could look down on the prodigies of the older generation, and even a super elite like the Lunar King was no match for him. Ling Han nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." "Ling Han, you can do it." Hunyo waved her little hands and cheered him on. "Beat him up. There's no need to give Uncle Rabbit face." Rabbit shouted from the side. Ling Han strode out and said, "I'll accept this battle." Puff the 5 sects were all laughing uncontrollably. You, a mere deity transformation tier elite, actually wanted to participate in this kind of battle? Wasn't this just seeking death? Putting aside the battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier, any shattering void tier elite could easily slap him to death. Did the Purple Moon Dynasty give up? That's right, Ma Duobao couldn't go up, so no matter who went up, they could only swallow the fruit of defeat. It was the same no matter who went up. However, the Demon Snake King's expression changed slightly, and he said, "This child cannot be underestimated. His defensive power is extremely strong, extremely strong." At least, when he had slapped the other party, it was as if nothing had happened. Such a defensive power was really terrifying. Because this matter was rather embarrassing, he didn't tell anyone, and even made Su Xiu-ren keep his mouth shut. As a result, no one knew that Ling Han's physique was actually comparable to 10th tier rare metal. "You." Wu Gaoyuan couldn't help but frown. "Who do you think I am?" Are you even worthy of fighting me? He felt utterly humiliated. This Purple Moon Empire probably knew that he would definitely lose, so he deliberately sent a deity transformation tier elite to humiliate him. Detestable, truly detestable. An ominous glint flashed in his eyes. Since that was the case, he would torture Ling Han to death. What face would Ling Han have? Cut the crap. Make your move. Ling Han beckoned with his finger. Wu Gaoyuan had already regained his composure, and his anger had transformed into dense killing intent. He revealed a cruel smile and raised his hand. Instantly, a myriad of silver lights flickered and transformed into countless sharp swords that shot towards Ling Han. 10,000 swords pierced the heart. Ling Han didn't make a move. He only raised his sword heart. Shwa, 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 the sharp swords streaked past his body, but they didn't even harm a single hair on his body. Sword heart, Wu Gaoyuan was slightly startled, and then laughed loudly. Not bad, you actually comprehended the heart of martial art. This is truly rare. You have to know that even in our divine realm, only 1 out of 10 shattering void tier elites would at most comprehend the heart of martial art. So few. Ling Han said inwardly. The 8 kings all cultivated the heart of martial art, and there were quite a few in the 5 sections. The Sword King, Severing Heaven Saber, and even Su Xiu Ran and Small Sword Emperor all cultivated the heart of martial art. In terms of proportion, this was at least 1/10, or even more. But thinking about it again, this was actually normal. Although the divine realm was rich in cultivation resources, it could only allow martial artists to reach the shattering void tier faster, or even higher levels. However, martial arts still needed to be comprehended on one's own. Moreover, due to the lack of cultivation resources in the lower realm, those who could break through to the shattering void tier were all geniuses among geniuses, so the ratio of comprehending the heart of martial art was naturally higher. I'm slightly interested. Wu Gaoyuan's killing intent blazed even more. It's only interesting to kill such geniuses. Not bad, cultivating sword heart in the deity transformation tier, you should be the first in the lower realm, right? Su Xiu Ran and Small Sword Emperor both revealed looks of disdain. They were only born in the lower realm, and if they could obtain the divine realm's resources to cultivate, they definitely wouldn't be weaker than Wu Gaoyuan and the others. Ling Han extended his hand, then crooked his finger, and said, "Are you born in the year of the donkey, so long-winded?" A vein popped out on Wu Gaoyuan's forehead, and he said menacingly, "Angering me won't do you any good." "You're still long-winded," Ling Han said sarcastically. Fuck. Wu Gaoyuan finally couldn't hold back, and struck out with another palm strike. This time, it was still a dance of tens of thousands of swords, but with the support of Sword Heart, its power was obviously stronger, and it couldn't possibly be affected by Ling Han's Sword Heart. A full power attack of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier. How to block it? Completely unblockable. Peng, Ling Han was immediately sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Wu Gaoyuan snorted, and said, "Do we still need to compete?" "Of course." Ling Han crawled up from the ground, and stretched his muscles and bones. Pa, the bones all over his body cracked, and his blood and chi boiled, soaring into the sky. Everyone was dumbfounded. Was this guy a freak? Previously, Justice Mountain King was almost killed in a single blow, and only escaped a calamity thanks to Ma Duobao's intervention, but Ling Han took this blow and was completely fine. How could anyone believe it? He was only in the deity transformation tier, so how could he be so strong? This boy's physique is comparable to 10th tier rare metal. A Shattering Void tier elite exclaimed. The other people of the 5 sects finally understood, but they still couldn't help but grimace. This guy was too freakish. A deity transformation tier with a physique comparable to 10th tier rare metal, wouldn't that be close to invincible? No wonder this guy dared to enter the field. This physique was nature-defying, which was equivalent to standing in an invincible position. 10th tier rare metal. Wu Gaoyuan sneered. So what? I'll still refine it. Ling Han brushed off his hands, and said, don't just brag, come and fight. If you can't win against me in 10 moves, it'll be considered your loss. Fuck, you can't talk your own way. Wu Gaoyuan snorted, and said, who promised you that there would be a limit of 10 moves? You, a shattering void tier elite with 18 stars of battle prowess, fight me, a deity transformation tier elite, and 10 moves still aren't enough? How about I start with one hand? Ling Han said with a smile. This guy was really evil. Wu Gaoyuan was also quite angry, and this time, he really couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Ling Han. He directly pounced out, and launched an attack at Ling Han. Shua, he drew out a treasured sword, its cold light shocking the skies. This was a 10th tier spirit tool, and at this moment, it was completely awakened, as if a shattering void tier elite had joined the battle. Ling Han was unafraid. He didn't want to win in the first place, and instead wanted to drag the final battle to a draw. Then, who cared if it was 1 or 10 shattering void tier elites, he would only defend and not attack. Come. Hung, hung, hung. Wu Gaoyuan brandished the 10th tier spirit tool, and slashed wildly at Ling Han, like a demon god. Chapter 834. One had to know that when level 10 spirit tools collided with level 10 spirit tools, it was impossible for both to come out unscathed. If the number of collisions was few, it was indeed fine, but if the number of collisions increased, one side would definitely be injured. And if the quality of the two was almost the same, then there would be damage. Thus, even if Ling Han's physique was comparable to level 10 rare metal, he could still be injured by a level 10 spirit tool, and even severed. Wu Gaoyuan's battle prowess was really too strong. With a few strikes, Ling Han began to bleed, and even the physique of level 10 rare metal couldn't withstand it. Ha ha ha, stubborn, try being stubborn again, he said with a loud laugh. This isn't stubbornness, but strength, Ling Han said with a faint smile, channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, and his wounds immediately healed automatically. If this injury wasn't caused by a shattering void tier elite, then Body of Diamond could heal itself. Unfortunately, a shattering void tier's attack naturally brought with it the will of martial art, which could obstruct Body of Diamond's self-healing. He had to channel the indestructible heaven scroll to expel Wu Gaoyuan's will of martial art before his injuries could be healed. The speed was shockingly fast, and he instantly recovered completely. His blood and qi were exuberant as if they could burn the heavens. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was speechless. What kind of fuck you level of recovery ability was this? It was fine if his physique was tough, and if he really couldn't be damaged, he could still slowly refine it, but such recovery ability coupled with such a physique, it became unsolvable. Such recovery ability, can you always have it? Wu Gaoyuan sneered. He didn't believe that Ling Han could possess such terrifying recovery ability without limit, and it definitely wouldn't be long before it became ineffective. He attacked madly, wanting to force Ling Han to his limit. Everyone nodded. How could such shocking recovery ability be maintained forever? The consumption was definitely extremely great. Moreover, there was no need to wait for such recovery ability to disappear. As long as the speed of recovery couldn't keep up with the destructive power, then Ling Han would still die. However, to everyone's surprise, Ling Han stood up again and again. No matter how the wind blew, he was like a boulder, unmoving. Wu Gaoyuan did not believe it. He kept thinking that Ling Han would reach his limit after the next round, but he was disappointed again and again. Ling Han stood up again, and stood up again. This he was clearly strong, and not just by a little bit. He could absolutely crush his opponent, but he was helpless against this freak. All he could do was continuously knock him down, but there was no way he could kill him. The 8 kings finally revealed looks of joy. They had originally thought that they were going to be tricked by the 5 sects this time. With their personalities, they would definitely not go back on their word and would not send out troops for the next 100 years. Although he felt helpless, keeping his promise was naturally more important than anything else. It's a miracle. Although Ling Han definitely couldn't win, as long as he didn't lose, this match would be a draw, and the whole wager would also be a draw. They obviously didn't have to keep their promise of not sending troops for 100 years. Even Ma Duobao nodded slightly. He knew that Ling Han wasn't simple, but he never expected that he would be this extraordinary. On the other hand, the 5 sects' faces were all gloomy. They deliberately showed weakness earlier, luring Ma Duobao and the others to agree to the wager, and were about to succeed. Who would have thought that such a freak would actually appear? 9 matches were a draw, and even if it was overtime, would Ma Duobao still agree to not fight? Damn, this damned brat. The 5 sects all hated Ling Han. If this battle really ended in a draw, Ling Han would be the 5 sects' mortal enemy. Moreover, this brat's current cultivation was only in the deity transformation tier. If he advanced into the shattering void tier, who in the world could stop him? Wu Gaoyuan went mad. He thought highly of himself, and the geniuses of the immortal realm obviously couldn't stand someone from the lower realm. This time, the 5 great divine sects paid a great price to send their 5 shattering void tier elites over, all for the sake of turning the tide. But now, a mere deity transformation tier elite stopped him. If this were to spread back to the immortal realm, would he still have the face to see others in the future? He brandished his treasured sword, continuously slashing at Ling Han, vowing to blast Ling Han into dregs. It was useless. Ling Han didn't have an indestructible body, and he would also be injured. However, his recovery speed was so fast that it made people speechless. Unless one had the ability to destroy Ling Han's vitals in one strike, he would never be defeated if the battle continued like this. Wu Gaoyuan already went all out. He formed Sword Heart, but hadn't reached the level of illumination. He wanted to use Sword Heart to slash at Ling Han's spirit, but in a contest of spirits, Ling Han wasn't the slightest bit weaker. He also formed Sword Heart, and was even close to reaching great accomplishment. The two battled fiercely. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. It was unknown how many injuries Ling Han suffered, but now he didn't come out at all. The only change was that the clothes he wore had changed quite a few times. It couldn't be helped, the indestructible Heaven's Scroll couldn't restore his clothes, and since they were torn, he could only change to a new set. Although there was no set time, it's impossible to fight endlessly, Ma Duobao said. Enough, this battle is considered a draw. How could it be a draw? The 5 sects obviously wouldn't accept it, and said one after another, Wu Gaoyuan obviously had the absolute upper hand. Is having the upper hand the same as winning? The Lunar King sneered. Then why don't you say that Ling Han is only in the deity transformation tier, but could rival a shattering void tier elite for 3 days? This king would say that Ling Han won. Ma Duobao took a few steps forward, and said, I say this battle is a draw, who has an opinion? My. Someone from the 5 sects jumped out. It was a shattering void tier elite, but only in the 3rd layer of the shattering void tier. Ma Duobao glanced at him, and with a wave of his right hand, endless killing intent intertwined. Pooh, that shattering void tier elite was actually swept by a ball of light, and was instantly torn into pieces. Fresh blood dripped, shaking the entire mountain. This shattering void tier elite actually couldn't stand up again, and his aura was quickly dissipating. Dead, with just one strike, an elite in the 3rd layer of the shattering void tier was killed, and from such a long distance. It was like taking the head of a general among a million people was as easy as taking something out of one's pocket, easy and pleasant. This was the strength of the Purple Moon Empire's #1 elite. Ma Duobao didn't take another look, and said indifferently, who else has an opinion? For a moment, no one from the 5 sects made a sound. Even as strong as Zhuo Qifang and the other 3 didn't dare to confront Ma Duobao head-on. Battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Absolutely. How could a human possibly cultivate to battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier? Even the descendants of divine beasts and saints rarely could reach such heights. Damn it, if it was in the immortal realm, the sect could just casually send out a person to kill him. Zhuo Qifang and the other three communicated in soft voices. They were judging whether they could stop Ma Duo Bao if the 5 of them joined forces. But even if they could, who among the 8 kings could stop them? Wu Gaoyuan, catch the axe. An old man with lightning flickering on his body suddenly waved his hand, and threw an axe at Zhuo Qifang. Mountain and river axe. It wasn't an imitation, but a real mountain and river axe, with the surface of the axe made from the power of the realm. With a strike from this axe, would even a 10th tier rare metal be directly cut in half? Chapter 835. If only one person could survive, Shui Yenyu naturally hoped that it would be Ling Han. She didn't care about how the situation of the world would change after Empress Luan Xing died, nor did she care about how many people would hunt her and Ling Han down. At this moment, she only wanted Ling Han to be alive. Pa! However, when she thrust her sword forward, it was tightly grasped by a hand, unable to advance any further. Empress Luan Xingxi had already raised her head, and her body had also turned around. Though her expression couldn't be seen, it was clear that she was definitely enraged to the point of madness. Her own subordinate actually dared to assassinate her. A heinous crime of treason. Boundless killing intent surged, bringing with it a terrifying domineering imperial might, causing Shui Yenyu's face to turn pale. It was as if all blood had drained from her face. However, she was unafraid, and only looked at Ling Han with deep love. They couldn't live together, but they could die together. However, the fatal blow that she had imagined didn't arrive even after a long time. She couldn't help but feel strange, and walked towards Empress Luan Xing. However, this empress's entire body was enveloped in an aura of primal chaos, so it was impossible to see the expression on her face. Ling Han's body moved, and he woke up. The massive loss of blood caused him to instantly faint. However, his divine sense was extremely powerful and resilient, so he naturally woke up very quickly. He reached out and grabbed Empress Luan Xing's wrist, his expression determined. If there's anything, come at me. He was extremely weak, but his tone was resolute. Empress Luan Xing flew into a rage. How pure was she? Yet she had actually sucked the blood of a stinky man. This made her feel as if she had been defiled. She resolutely raised her hand, and 4 heavenly bodies appeared behind her. Each of the heavenly bodies exuded a terrifying aura, causing Ling Han's skin to instantly burst open. However, all of his blood had been sucked away, and not a single drop of blood flowed out at this moment. It was an extremely strange sight. Biting the hand that feeds you. Ling Han was not going to wait for death in vain. He immediately said, "Don't think that I don't know that you were injured just then. You sucked my blood to control your injuries, or perhaps to unleash some kind of secret technique." So what? Empress Luan Xing said coldly. Her target had been Shui Yenyu in the first place. It wasn't like she was going to kill her, so why did she have to come over? Tui, she had sucked this man's dirty blood, and they had even become intimate with each other. Just thinking about it gave her goosebumps. She was disgusted to the extreme. As an empress, you have to be able to distinguish between kindness and hatred. If you kill us, you will be considered to be muddle-headed and tyrannical. Ling Han said whatever he thought of. Now that he had fallen into the hands of an elite of the heavenly body tier, he naturally had to think of a way to escape. So what if I betray everyone in the world? Empress Luan Xing did not fall for his trick. Do you have any last words? Fuck, you don't play by the rules. Ling Han racked his brains, but the gap in power was too wide, so it seemed as if all his ideas were completely useless. Humph. Empress Luan Xing moved, and her palm struck toward Ling Han's head. Ling Han couldn't care less. Even if he had to expose the secret of the Black Tower, he had to let Small Tower make a move. At worst, he would just flee to the ends of the world. Now that he had entered the immortal realm, the world was vast, unlike the small world where elites could easily find him in such a small place. However, Empress Luan Xing's palm strike came to a halt midway. Damn it, the Empress cursed in her mind. At this moment, the will of the ninth king actually appeared, and stopped her from delivering this palm strike. She wanted to sever this thought, but if she did, the implications would be too great. This meant that her 1,000,000 years of hard work would go up in smoke. True enough, she had stopped her too late. This detestable man had already formed a favorable impression of the ninth king, and was affecting her at this moment. She steeled her heart, and was about to deliver another palm strike. However, a feeling of grief and resentment circulated in her heart, causing her to stop again. Detestable. Detestable. Empress Luan Xing humphed, and tossed Ling Han out. She said coldly, "Today's matter has never happened." After saying this, her figure leaped, and she instantly disappeared without a trace. How unreasonable! Ling Han said through gritted teeth. He had already channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, but this was used to heal his injuries. In fact, he hadn't been injured, and it was only his origin energy that had been greatly depleted. Even this drop of indestructible true fluid couldn't completely heal him, and his face was still deathly pale. Meanwhile, Shui Yanyu felt as if she were dreaming. They had actually escaped a calamity. Master, I've missed you so much. The Azura Demon Emperor appeared, an expression of fear and trepidation on his face. Fuck off. Ling Han sent him flying with a kick. This guy was indeed unreliable. Previously, when Empress Luan Xing had been present, he hadn't even dared to let out a fart. Now, however, he had actually run out. However, this couldn't be blamed. Even if the Azura Demon Emperor had run out, he would only be running to his death. Thus, Ling Han had only sent him flying to vent his anger, and hadn't dealt a fatal blow. Phew, I didn't die. How fortunate. Ling Han exhaled. He'd just treated as if he had been bitten by a dog. There were plenty of tonics in the Black Tower, and it wouldn't be long before he could recover his origin energy. Meanwhile, Shui Yanyu rolled her eyes at him, and said, "Do you know that you molested Her Majesty just then?" Ha! Ling Han wore a strange expression, and said, "Are you joking? Just then, I was about to be sucked dry, and I can still molest that woman." Humph, I clearly saw that both of your hands were grabbing onto Her Majesty's breasts. Shui Yanyu was filled with jealousy. Previously, she had only been concerned about Ling Han, and now that he was safe, she naturally began to feel jealous. What? Ling Han was stunned, and raised his hands in disbelief. These two people had actually grabbed onto Empress Luan Xing's breasts. Fuck, why didn't he have the slightest impression? Are you still thinking about it, and are still thinking about it? Shui Yanyu humphed. Men were indeed unreliable. What are you being jealous about? Ling Han pulled her into his arms, and said, "I almost died just then, so how could I think so much?" Shui Yanyu also showed an expression of lingering fear. One of them had grabbed the Empress's breasts, and the other had attempted to commit regicide, yet neither of them had died. This was practically an inconceivable miracle. My wife's hands are still the best. Ling Han chuckled, and grabbed onto the tea-bowl-sized breasts on Shui Yanyu's breasts. The feeling was really wonderful. Pervert, pervert. Shui Yanyu chided. She was just about to pinch Ling Han, yet discovered that Ling Han had already collapsed into her arms, and had fainted. Instantly, tenderness filled her heart, and she wrapped her arms around Ling Han. This man had only stepped forward to protect her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused such trouble later on. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. If a woman could encounter a man who was willing to risk his life for her, what else could she ask for? She hugged Ling Han, and allowed him to rest comfortably in her soft bosom. She did her best to rest. However, she still didn't understand. The Empress had clearly developed a frightening killing intent towards them, so why had she stopped? Was there anything in this world that could cause the Empress to feel apprehensive? Definitely not. But she very quickly tossed this thought to the back of her mind, and only stared at Ling Han in a daze, a sweet feeling in her heart. Chapter 836. Ma Duobao didn't take it to heart at all, and said, "Come together. You don't have to say that, we have the same intention." Zhuo Qifang, Wu Gaoyuan, and the other divine realm's 5 geniuses, plus the 2 18-eyed corpse kings, this lineup was truly terrifying. 20 stars of shattering void tier battle prowess, extremely rare even in the divine realm. I'd really like to see it. Unfortunately, so what if it's 20 stars of battle prowess? The gap between the immortal level is too large, and the difference between 10 stars of shattering void tier and 20 stars of shattering void tier isn't very large, so there's absolutely no need to attack this limit. After today, there will be no Purple Moon Kingdom. Zhuo Qifang and the others all sneered, their words also filled with disdain. Ling Han, however, shook his head. It was precisely because the gap between each tier of the immortal level was too large that every tier below had to be cultivated to perfection. Otherwise, what right did those so-called 1-star geniuses and 2-star geniuses have to be stronger than others? Zhuo Qifang and the others said so only because they had no way of reaching the height of 20 stars. In other immortal realm, any random person from the 5 sects would be able to sweep through the entire vast lands if they were not suppressed by the power of the realm, but the 5 sects might not be some top-notch force in the immortal realm, so the younger generation that they nurtured might not necessarily be able to cultivate to perfection in every cultivation level. However, to be able to reach 18 stars in the Shattering Void tier was already extremely extraordinary. At least, the vast lands only produced 2 freaks, Ma Duobao and Helian Tianyun, who knew how many millennia ago. Ma Duobao casually raised his hand, and attacked the 7 great elites. Hey! The 5 great geniuses all attacked in unison. Wu Gaoyuan even brandished the mountain and river axe, and as the axe's surface swept past, even space itself was torn apart. The 2 18-eyed corpse kings were unafraid of Ma Duobao's strength, and directly faced him head-on. Peng, peng, the 2 great corpse kings were immediately sent flying back, but with their clash, the power of Ma Duobao's attack was greatly reduced, and Zhuo Qifang and the others could easily receive it. This also showed Ma Duobao's strength. It was just a casual attack, and it actually required 7 great elites of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier to work together to be able to match it. Bam, bam, bam. They were soon engaged in a brawl. Both sides definitely had their ultimate moves that they hadn't used yet. They fought from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, and then to the sky. Stars fell one after another, and it was as if the world was going to end. Fortunately, the stars in the sky were formed from the power of the world and could be constantly replenished. Otherwise, with the way the experts were fighting, no matter how many stars there were, they wouldn't be able to withstand such a torment. Hee, have you guys washed your necks clean? Heavenly Astral King sneered. Although they, the 8 kings, couldn't be considered elites of the 2nd tier, with 18 stars of Shattering Void tier battle prowess appearing, 15 stars of battle prowess was still the 3rd tier. Although there were only 8 of them, they had enough confidence to defeat the hundreds of Shattering Void tier elites of the 5 sections. Shameless boasting. The white-haired old-timers began to ignite their chi and blood. Rumble. Terrifying power erupted from their bodies, instantly pushing their battle prowess to 14 stars. The 5 sects truly had deep foundations. Generally speaking, as long as they advanced into the Shattering Void tier, the elites of the 5 sects would choose to seal themselves, and wait until the end of the reckoning and enter into the immortal level before continuing to cultivate. This way, they would achieve twice the result with half the effort. However, there were also a few who chose not to seal themselves and continued to cultivate, leaving themselves only a few dozen years before using the time source fluid. They were known as protector guardians. If they encountered a major event that threatened the survival of the five sects, although it was unlikely to happen, they would unseal themselves and come out to eliminate the danger. However, because their lifespan was already at its end, they had to ignite their chi and blood in every battle. This was actually using their lifespan as the price, further shortening their already short lifespan. Even if they entered the immortal realm in the future, they might not have enough time to advance into the immortal level. This required considerable awareness and courage, so the protector guardians were also the most respected. Even Zhuo Qifang and the other geniuses of the immortal realm were polite and respectful. There were a total of 5 such protector guardians. 4 of them had 14 stars of Shattering Void tier battle prowess, and the last reached 15 stars of Shattering Void tier. With the addition of these 5 people, the strength of the 5 sects naturally soared. Kill. Although the Lunar King was a woman, her temper was the most irritable, and she was the first to charge out. Lunar 8 style. The moment she came out, she used her ultimate move. Her 2 white hands turned into giant palms that covered the sky and earth, slapping downwards with peng, peng, peng. The other 7 kings obviously wouldn't sit still, and charged out one after another. Ling Han, on the other hand, became unaffected. He stroked his chin, and muttered to himself, "Do I still need to attack?" The Revere Life Sword no longer shone. Just now, it was actually Ma Duobao controlling it from afar, and now Ma Duobao himself had to fight a strong enemy, so he obviously didn't have the spare time to control the Revere Life Sword. Although Ling Han's defense was the best, perhaps unrivaled, in front of a Shattering Void tier elite, his lethality was completely insignificant. Whether he attacked or not didn't seem to change anything. "Ling Han, I'll be your opponent." Su Xiu ran out holding the absolute saber. Ling Han waved his hands, and said, "I can't be bothered to fight with you, you're too weak now." Su Xiu trembled in anger. He was still a well-known figure among the whole world's younger generation, and even in the immortal realm, those who comprehended Saber Heart could still be called geniuses, just not that rare anymore. "You're looking down on me too much. What if you add me? And me? Me?" Dong Ling, the Small Sword Emperor, and the Son of Lightning all took a step forward, their gazes cold. Ling Han shook the Revere Life Sword, and said, "All right, I'll send you guys to hell, and let you guys atone for the innocent blood shed by your ancestors. You're all just ants. Isn't it only right to make some contributions to our immortal realm?" The Son of Lightning said with a hideous grin. He had already unleashed the imitation mountain river axe, and a sliver of realm power condensed within it. Its might was similarly not to be underestimated. Ling Han's expression became stern, and he raised the sword horizontally, pointed it at the Son of Lightning, and said, "Just because of these words, you deserve to die. Then you'll have to be able to kill me first." The Son of Lightning laughed loudly, and brandished the mountain river axe in an attack. This treasured tool had already awakened, and was exuding a terrifying might. Unfortunately, the Revere Life Sword had no reaction at all. Could it be that the battle with extreme resplendence just now had consumed too much energy? This wasn't impossible. The mountain river axe could be said to be this realm's strongest spirit tool, and added with Wu Gaoyuan's strength, how terrifying would it be? Yet it was blocked by the Revere Life Sword. Although it was controlled by Ma Duobao, it must have been greatly exhausted, so it was normal that it couldn't unleash its might now. Ha 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 ha. When Su Xiu arrived, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. If this sword of yours couldn't awaken, how could it possibly be their match? He, too, awakened the absolute saber, and slashed at Ling Han. Once these 2 spirit tools awakened, they would have the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier, and would at least be at the standard of 10 stars, which was even stronger than the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. This far surpassed Ling Han's own battle prowess. Chapter 837. Ling Han used the thunderclap ninth heaven, and added with the demon fairy step, his figure was extremely agile. Zhu Xian Air, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat were all drawn into the Black Tower by him to avoid being accidentally injured in the chaotic battle. He didn't have to worry about the 1,000 old soldiers. They moved in a formation, their battle prowess extremely terrifying, and charged into the battle of the 8 kings, fighting alongside their boss. Though the absolute saber and the mountain and river axe were powerful, they were only spirit tools, after all, and didn't have a tool spirit. This meant that they could only deliver terrifying attacks, but wouldn't automatically lock onto a target, needing to be controlled by someone. No matter how freakishly talented Su Xiu Ran the Son of Lightning were, their tier was still a shortcoming. First, they had to capture Ling Han's tracks before they could attack. As long as they could do this, with the speed of the attacks from the 2 spirit tools, Ling Han couldn't dodge. But they had to capture Ling Han first. The speed of Ling Han's current speed was so fast that they were dazzled. Out of the 10 attacks that he had delivered, at least 9 of them had missed. If it were another person, it wouldn't matter. With the terror of these 2 spirit tools, they would be heavily injured even if they didn't die from one hit. But now it was Ling Han. His physique was on the level of 10th tier rare metal, so how could one hit be insignificant? Over 100 hits might only add a shallow wound. It couldn't be helped, a strong physique was just that capricious. Niu will help you. Hu Niu also charged out. Her physique couldn't compare to Ling Han's, but her speed was faster. She darted up and down, her small fists and claws filled with destructive power, giving Su Xiu Ran and the others an extremely strong threat. All 3 sides were in a chaotic battle. No matter which battle group, they were all Shattering Void tier elites, so even Heaven tier elites weren't qualified to join in such battles, and could only watch from afar, unless they could also get into a formation. But the battle between Ma Duobao and Wu Gaoyuan was the decisive one. Whoever won would be slaughtered without any suspense. Thus, though the other 2 battle groups were fighting fiercely, they all put a portion of their attention on the fierce battle at the very top. Would Ma Duobao suppress the heroes, or would he be devoured by a pack of wolves? In the second battle group, the Beast Snake King shouted, "Azura Demon Emperor, show yourself." Azura Demon Emperor Ling Han's heart trembled. This was battle prowess of 15 stars of Shattering Void tier, and it was very possible that it could change the balance of victory in the second battle. What a dog's nose. I've already hidden so far away, yet you can still smell me. The Azura Demon Emperor appeared. He was still in the body of a large man, and there was black demonic chi swirling around his whole body. He was very different from a normal person at first glance. There's still one more. How long are you going to keep up the act? Asked the Sword King. He sent a ray of sword chi into the distance. Hee hee. A cloaked person flew out from the other side. Third killing formation. A person was born with a formation, and the moment he was born, he would be the strongest existence in the world, capable of slaughtering Shattering Void tier cultivators. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he couldn't help but be startled. He had seen this person once before, but at that time, this person gave him a feeling of weakness. Although it was powerful, its body was extremely fragile. But now, that feeling was gone. Previously, he had acted on behalf of the Thousand Corpse sect, and the reward he had received was probably related to this, making up for one of his weaknesses. How strong was this kind of third killing formation? The 9 great killing formations could all slaughter Shattering Void tier cultivators. To be specific, Ling Han had only seen the 4th killing formation, and it wasn't formed naturally, but an incomplete formation set up by the Thousand Corpse sect, which was easily broken by Feng Peiyun. But how strong was the 3rd killing formation that made up for its weakness? It could slaughter Shattering Void tier cultivators with 10 stars of battle prowess, and 15 stars at that. This old man was entrusted by someone to make a move once, and leave after killing one person, the 3rd killing formation said, his gaze fixed on the 8 kings. Only killing one person, and the one he was going to kill was the 8 kings. With the addition of the Azura Demon Emperor, the 8 kings actually didn't have the upper hand on the battlefield, and the third killing formation really could kill one of them. Then, once this gap opened, the remaining 7 kings would definitely retreat in defeat, either fleeing or dying in battle here. Shattering Void Tier cultivators were hard to kill, but that didn't mean they couldn't be killed. Ling Han wanted to block the third killing formation. Although his battle prowess wasn't strong, his defense was too terrifying, and it couldn't be better to use him to disrupt the situation. "You'd better stay here obediently." Su Xiaoran smirked coldly, and joined forces with the Son of Lightning to stop Ling Han from being this shit-stirrer. The Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe moved together, and it would be strange if they still couldn't keep Ling Han here. Hang! Ma Duobao's cold humph came from the skies. "For the sake of, I'll spare your life, get lost." The third killing formation couldn't help but smirk coldly. Such arrogance, actually daring to tell him to get lost. He raised his head, and was indifferent at first, but his expression immediately changed drastically. Although everyone couldn't see his expression, they could clearly see that his body was trembling. You are." He cried out in shock, as if he was frightened, and there was indescribable terror in his tone. "Still not getting lost?" Ma Duobao reprimanded. Yes. The third killing formation didn't even dare to say a word, and actually really turned and left, instantly disappearing without a trace. The third killing formation could kill Shattering Void Tier cultivators, and was formed by heaven and earth, so how could he be scared away by a single word? Could it be that Ma Duobao had another identity? The third killing formation recognized him, and then was scared away. "Hang, when fighting against us, you still dare to be distracted." Wu Gaoyuan and the others sneered, and attacked together. Hong! Ma Duobao was instantly submerged by the endless brilliance. In such a high-intensity confrontation, how could he be distracted? Wu Gaoyuan and the others all revealed smiles. Although the third killing formation was scared away, if they could slaughter Ma Duobao, or at least cause him serious injuries, then it would be completely worth it. The brilliance dispersed, and Ma Duobao stood proudly, completely unharmed. If one had to insist, then the dragon robe on his body was torn in a few places, indicating that he had indeed received an attack just now, but his flesh wasn't injured. What? Wu Gaoyuan and the others all cried out in shock. What was this situation? They had 18 stars of Shattering Void Tier battle prowess, and being hit by them, so what if he had 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier? He would still be heavily injured, or even killed. Your physique. Zhuo Qifang reacted has reached the level of 10th tier rare metal, pooh. Everyone spluttered. Previously, Ling Han's terrifying physique already left a psychological shadow in people's hearts, and Ling Han only had a freakish physique, his battle prowess was completely negligible. But now, Ma Duobao's battle prowess was the best in the first place, and added with this kind of defense, how could they still fight? Wu Gaoyuan and the others all swallowed with difficulty, feeling for the first time that they had completely lost control of the battle situation. This Ma Duobao was completely the alternative dragon from back then, with invincible battle prowess and impenetrable defense. So what if a god descended? Fortunately, Shattering Void Tier cultivators had a limited lifespan, and time was the greatest weapon. I can't kill you, but I can at least trap you in this prison of heaven and earth until you die, right? Ma Duobao revealed a faint smile, and said, without this bit of strength, how can you talk about splitting open the skies? Shua, the aura on his body blazed wildly, and killing intent circulated. Even Wu Gaoyuan and the others felt their scalps go numb, and goosebumps rose all over their bodies. They only felt that Ma Duobao only had to raise his hand to kill them. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 838. How could a human be so strong? 18 stars of Shattering Void Tier was practically the ultimate battle prowess of this cultivation level. Moreover, there were still 7 of them, and if they joined forces, they would definitely be able to match 20 stars of shattering void tier, but why did they still feel a sense of fear? Could it be that Ma Duobao's battle prowess has even surpassed 20 stars? Impossible. Wu Gaoyuan and the others all shook their heads. They definitely did not believe that anyone could surpass the limit of battle prowess of 20 stars. Even the descendants of divine beasts and saints would rarely reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, what more surpassing it? We have to kill him today. Otherwise, with the support of the power of the nation, he'll become even stronger, said Zhuo Qifang. Kill! Xiao Miaoyan shouted sternly, brandishing a blood-red longsword. Then, with a slash of her fingers, her forehead split open, and a drop of vermilion blood gushed out. It was incomparably viscous, as if it had condensed into a crystal. The moment this drop of blood appeared, even heaven and earth were moved. Black clouds churned, and blazing white lightning could be faintly seen. This drop of blood was too powerful, so powerful that it almost exceeded the limits of this world. It drew the reaction of heaven and earth. God's blood. Ma Duobao finally revealed a cautious expression. Sure enough, the God realm hadn't simply sent 5 people down. They'd even smuggled their own goods. Although a single drop of God blood couldn't represent a god, in this world, the might of God blood was unimaginable. Xiao Miaoyan murmured softly. It was unknown what she was saying, but this drop of divine blood suddenly turned into rain, and sprinkled onto her long sword. Instantly, this sword emitted an endless brilliance, and even had the driving force to suppress the mountain and river axe. It was only a drop of divine blood, but under the enhancement, it was at least on par with the real mountain and river axe. This was too terrifying. It was the same for Zhuo Qifang and the others. They each took out a drop of God's blood and added it to their spirit weapons. Instantly, their auras became several times more terrifying. It was as if all of them had the bodies of gods. Now, the battle prowess of these 5 people had probably reached 20 stars of shattering void tier, and none of them was inferior to Ma Duobao. Die! The 5 of them worked together and unleashed their ultimate moves. The 5 spirit tools gave off great might and rushed into the sky, causing large amounts of stars to fall. How do I block that? That was 5 people with battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Even if he had a physique of level 10 rare metal, so what? He would still be cut in half. Could it be that Ma Duobao also had the terrifying recovery ability of Ling Han? Everything will be over. Ma Duobao also revealed a solemn expression. No matter how strong he was, he would not dare to look down on battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, what more when there were as many as 5 of them. He extended a finger, tapped lightly on his chest, and said, "Open." Hum! Immediately, endless killing intent circulated as his entire body emitted white light. One could clearly see glowing runes appearing on his exposed skin. They were ancient, vigorous, and grand. What was even more shocking was the murderous aura. These patterns were enough to make one's skin crawl. Those with lower cultivation levels would be blinded by a single glance. Will of martial art? No, it's an array pattern. Ling Han had seen Yin Hung imprinting formation patterns on her own body, and it was very practical. With her body as a formation, she could activate the power of the formation at any time, combining both offense and defense. But Ma Duobao's runes were completely natural. Ling Han even suspected that someone could reproduce these formation patterns, because he felt extremely uncomfortable just by using his eyes, and this was under the situation where he activated the Eye of Truth and channeled Sword Heart. Would a normal shattering void tier cultivator dare to stare? But if they didn't even dare, how could they reproduce such complicated formation patterns? Without decades or even centuries of study, how could they grasp them? Born with formation patterns, then wouldn't he be the same as the 3rd killing formation? No wonder he showed mercy to the 3rd killing formation earlier, and his tone was strange. No wonder the third killing formation was so agitated, because they were of the same kind, revealing each other's details. But the third killing formation was actually scared off by a single sentence from Ma Duobao. What did this mean? World's first killing formation, Zhuo Qifang and the others stopped their attacks at the same time, their faces revealing shock. Ma Duobao was also a natural formation user, and the first killing formation. According to the legends, the first killing formation could slaughter gods, so how could Zhuo Qifang and the others not be afraid? They hadn't even become gods yet. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. No wonder Ma Duobao on the martial art rock would leave behind the name first. This was not only his pride, but also because this was indeed his real name. World's first killing formation. Ma Duobao attacked. Hong, endless killing intent circulated, enveloping the heaven and earth. Wherever the white light swept past, the space was also forcibly torn apart, and there was endless energy turbulence attacking, extremely terrifying. This was his true strength. The world's first killing formation could slaughter gods. Zhuo Qifang and the others were forced to stand together and fight together. So what if 5 of the world's strongest spirit tools worked together? They were still suppressed, barely able to protect themselves. Pu, blood splattered everywhere on their bodies, and they were instantly riddled with wounds. This made the people of the 5 sects and the 1,000 Corpse sect despair. The world's first killing formation could kill gods and Buddhas, and was absolutely invincible in this small world. Otherwise, would it still be worthy of the title of first? Hong. Just at this moment, a strange thing happened. A ship's bow actually appeared from the spatial fissure torn open by Ma Duobao. Because the spatial fissure wasn't very large, only a tiny bit of the ship's bow appeared, but it was this tiny bit that made everyone's legs weaken, and they all fell down from the sky. No one was an exception. Zhuo Qifang and the others were like this, the 18-eyed Corpse King was like this, and so was Ma Duobao. Peng, 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 over 100 shattering void tier elites fell down from the sky like dumplings, each and every one of them tumbling down, looking extremely pathetic. This scene was a bit funny. Shattering void tier elites would actually be like this, but now, no one could laugh, and instead revealed an expression of extreme fear. Everyone knew that the void was the most dangerous place in the world. Being in it, even 10th tier rare metals would be quickly torn into pieces. However, it was too difficult to open the void, and only shattering void tier elites could do it, using it to open up a passage and enter the divine realm. However, shattering the void was definitely an extremely dangerous thing, and one could easily die. Even without the great formation laid down by the 5 sects, only half of the shattering void tier elites could successfully shatter the void. However, a ship sailed over from the void. This was practically like a myth. What material could resist the destructive power of the void? All of a sudden, everyone lost the will to fight, leaving only shock and confusion. What did this ship represent? Hong, the ship's bow lightly struck the spatial fissure. It obviously didn't seem heavy, but after every strike, the heavens and earth shook, and even shattering void tier elites couldn't help but spit out blood. It was as if it struck their hearts. The black tower trembled lightly inside their bodies. Ling Han was unaffected, and so was Hun Yo. The little girl was similarly very strange. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 839. Xiao, the sharp arrow shot out. This arrow was incredibly fast, turning into a streak of light that shot towards that strange demonic beast. Ling Han nodded internally. Though the power of this arrow couldn't compare to the annihilating dragon star arrow, the gap wasn't too big. However, if he used this bow to unleash the annihilating dragon star arrow, the power would definitely be stronger. If he used the ultimate arrow, then there was even less to say. Ding! The sharp arrow shot out, releasing a series of sparks, and then bounced back. That demonic beast seemed to have been startled awake, and suddenly stood up. This was as if a carpet had been grabbed from the middle, and then lifted up, extremely strange. But in the process of lifting it up, the figure of this demonic beast was also changing, actually turning from a thin carpet into a fierce tiger. It was 30 meters long, 15 meters tall, and its whole body was crimson red. The fur on its neck seemed to be burning, and it was awe-inspiring. Everyone was shocked, not because of the appearance of the demonic beast, but because Xiao Cici's arrow actually didn't have the slightest effect. This was extremely shocking. The strength of the demonic beast is beyond our expectations. What do we do? Force our way in? Why don't we first lure this demonic beast away, then open the door, and then leave together? This idea isn't bad, there's obviously no point in wasting time here. Everyone nodded. After discussing for a while, they decided that Duan, Xi Xian, and Su Jing would lure the demonic beast away, while the rest of them would be responsible for opening the door. They were all prodigies of the current generation, and since the plan had been formulated, then they would naturally carry it out to the letter without any hesitation. Ugly thing, come and chase us. The three of them started to provoke the demonic beast, but the demonic beast was lazy and couldn't be bothered with them. It was as if it had been shot by an arrow earlier but didn't chase after them. It was so lazy that one's hair stood on end. Duan and the other two quickly made their move, shooting out waves of essence force at the demonic beast. At first, the demonic beast couldn't be bothered with them, but after being hit so many times, it finally couldn't take it anymore. With a roar, it charged at the three of them. This pounce was extremely fast. Duan and the other two scattered and fled, making use of the terrain here to play hide-and-seek with the demonic beast. Ling Han and the others also rushed out, and began to attack that door. Peng, peng, peng. Loud bangs rang out continuously, but what surprised them was that this door was unbreakable. Everyone unleashed their ultimate moves, but no matter how sharp their attacks were, which could even insta-kill an ordinary cultivator at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, they were completely useless against this door. I can't open it at all. They couldn't help but admit that in front of this door, their power was like a mayfly encountering a tree, completely unable to move. Xiao Cici was meticulous, and suddenly pointed at that demonic beast, and said, "On that tiger's neck." Everyone looked over, and saw that there was actually a key tied around the demonic beast's neck. Come, we definitely have to defeat this ferocious tiger, and take the key to open the door. No shortcuts. Then let's call Brother Du and the others back, and fight with all our strength. Everyone was filled with heroic spirit. Previously, it was only because they didn't want to waste time that they decided to lure the tiger away from its den, but now that they could only fight, they were also unafraid. Shui Yanyu and the spear-wielding man retreated to one side. They couldn't possibly interfere in this kind of battle, or else they would only be courting death. That was because this demonic tiger was extremely powerful. Otherwise, Duan and the others wouldn't have needed to lure it away, and could have just directly trapped it in one side. Everyone sent out a signal for Duan and the others to return. Duan and the others circled back, and couldn't help but feel strange when they found that the door was still tightly locked. There's no need to ask. This door can't be opened at all, and we need to use the key hanging around that demonic beast's neck, Guan Rong explained. Then let's battle it out. Duan and the others were not the slightest bit afraid. The 8 great prodigies stood side by side, and welcomed the demonic tiger that had run back. This demonic tiger was a little unbelievably powerful, and there were as many as 80 divine patterns on its body. What kind of concept was this? It was equivalent to an 8-star genius, and furthermore, it was at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier in the first place, and added with the power of 8 stars, it was so powerful that it had no friends. No wonder it was a team of 10 people. Though Ling Han and the others were all prodigies among prodigies, they would still only be defeated if they encountered this demonic beast. Theoretically speaking, the number of 10 people could make up for the gap of 1 star of battle prowess. After all, these prodigies had yet to form their 5th mountain river, and there was practically no way they could deal with this demonic beast. Come, The 8 of them were all brimming with confidence. Aside from Ling Han, the other 6 had all reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and their power was as high as 6 stars. Added with the secret techniques that they had grasped, their battle prowess was at least 7 stars, and when they used their ultimate moves, their battle prowess would definitely be able to reach 8 stars. Thus, the possibility that they would be able to win was still relatively high. "I'll focus on the front," Ling Han said. This received the complete approval of Xiao Sisi, Su Jing, and Duan. Though Xia Wuk was very displeased, he did not object. They knew that the toughness of Ling Han's physique was far superior to theirs, and he was the best choice to take on the front. Meanwhile, Li Xian and the others had never seen Ling Han's defenses before, and were slightly surprised. A cultivator in the high extreme of the mountain river tier would take on the front. But even Xia Wuk did not object, so they naturally could only believe him. Ling Han drew out the divine demon sword, and after it had recovered, he immediately charged at the demonic tiger. Peng, the demonic tiger, waved its paw, and Ling Han was instantly sent flying. Its power was too strong, and had almost reached the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. Ling Han was completely unqualified to stand against it. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and couldn't help but feel gloomy. Previously, he had just been sucked dry by Empress Yuan Xing, and had only recovered a little with great difficulty, and now he had been beaten to the point of spitting blood again. There was a grudge between them, right? This strike dislocated a few of his bones, but Ling Han merely shook his origin power, and his bones naturally returned to their original positions. He shot off, and charged back again. He used the fast technique, and his attacks were like a tidal wave. However, though Ling Han's physique was freakish, that demonic beast was not simple either. Under Ling Han's strike after strike, it was similarly unaffected, as if it was indestructible. This was really inconceivable. Previously, it had turned into a carpet that was soft to the extreme, but now, it was as if it had been forged from high-grade godly metal, and was incredibly hard. How could these two completely different qualities possibly appear on the same body? The demonic beast pounced, its battle prowess powerful, and it had an air of supremacy. Ling Han held it back from the front, and the 7 of them attacked with all their might, but every attack was a waste of effort. The freakishness of this demonic tiger's defenses even surpassed Ling Han's. This is definitely not a demonic beast, but a puppet, Ling Han concluded. He had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and that was why he possessed such a physique. How could it be something that any random cat or dog could compare to? But if this demonic tiger was a puppet forged from godly metal, then it was easy to understand. As long as level 5 godly metal was extracted to forge it, then its defenses would naturally be something that no mountain river tier could handle. This could also explain why its power was so strong. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.